Chapter 217. Lu Qing shook his head and smiled. If that is the case, then I will have to disappoint you. Although this book is called the simplified version of the Nine-Saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation, it has nothing to do with it. This book is based on the Nine-Saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation. Although it is very powerful, it requires 9 cultivators of similar cultivation to cooperate strictly. The requirements are very high, and it only exists in theory. Aside from the person in charge of the formation, the other 8 people need to be like this person's arm. They need to move freely and naturally, without any hesitation or pause. If there is any disharmony, the formation will immediately fail and cause a backlash. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He said, "Old senior, how do you know so clearly?" Lu Qing smiled faintly and said, "I am not talented, but I was the one who wrote this book. So that's how it is." No wonder he is so familiar with it and knows it so clearly. Xiao Chen said, "In that case, I will listen to senior and not look at this book." Wait a moment. Lu Qing stopped Xiao Chen and handed him a complete simplified version of the Nine-Saber Heavenly Exterminating Formation. It is fine to look at it sometimes. Who knows, you might be able to find a solution in the future. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. After he received it and thanked Lu Qing, he immediately left the library. Outside the library, Lu Suifeng sat alone on the stone steps. His expression was very lonely. He was probably still thinking about Wang Rong's return. Xiao Chen walked over to his side. He was not sure what kind of grudge Lu Suifeng had with Wang Rong, so he did not know how to console him. Sometimes, it was fine to suffer a setback or setback. It was fine as long as one could learn from the humiliation and move forward bravely. However, Xiao Chen did not know if Lu Suifeng could figure it out. If he was unable to recover from this setback, he would only develop a heart demon, and his cultivation would come to a halt. "Brother Yi, did you obtain the secret manual? Let's go down the mountain. Thank you for helping me earlier." When Lu Suifeng heard Yi Chen's footsteps, he got up and forced a smile. Xiao Chen patted his shoulder and said, "We are friends. It is only right for me to help you." On the way down, Lu Suifeng was silent. He was not as happy as he was when he first came up the mountain. The two of them walked down the mountain in silence. "Wait." After the two of them walked for a while, a voice suddenly appeared in their minds. They stopped and exchanged glances. They could see a trace of doubt in each other's eyes. Suddenly, Lu Suifeng closed his eyes as though he was communicating with the voice. After a while, he opened his eyes and said to Xiao Chen, "My old man wants you to go to the summit. He wants to see you." Lu Suifeng's father, the previous peak master of Qingyun Peak, the person who controlled the divine weapon and lived at the peak. 2. Xiao Chen was. He actually wanted to. He. Xiao Chen to ask. He, Xiao Chen, to. He. Saber. Lu. Chen, Xiao. Chen. Chen nodded to. With to with. 2. Xiao Chen nodded. He executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art and dashed on the mountain path. In the blink of an eye, he had traveled a few hundred meters. Lu Suifeng watched as Xiao Chen disappeared. He muttered, "I really don't understand. A few months ago, his strength was about the same as mine. Now, I can't see through him at all. He might even be able to fight against Wang Rong." When Lu Suifeng thought of Wang Rong, he revealed an expression of hatred and helplessness. Qingyun Peak was 4,000 or 5,000 meters tall. The higher one went, the steeper the path became. In the end, there was no longer a complete path. There was only a precipitous mountain. Clouds lingered at the top of the mountain. A strong wind blew, making people's clothes flutter. Xiao Chen looked around. The cliff was smooth and there was still a kilometer of height. He could not find a suitable place to borrow strength from. The small perfection blue dragon cloud soaring art was unable to fly. Xiaochen could only use the gravity spell and fly to the top of the mountain. Using the gravity spell at a height of several thousand meters exhausted a lot of essence. Furthermore, the strong wind blew. This last part of the journey was very slow. Xiaochen felt like he was ascending to the heavens. He did not know how Lu Suifeng managed to get up there in the past. After making it to the top of the mountain, Xiaochen landed firmly on the ground. At the top of the mountain, an old man sat cross-legged on a rock. His expression did not change at all, it was like he was one with the rock. Beside the rock was the divine weapon that could destroy the world. It was placed quietly in a wooden box, looking very ordinary. Xiaochen had always been curious about the old man's identity. He had an uncertain guess. Now that he saw the old man, he sized him up carefully. However, he discovered that the old man was different from the person in his memory. After coming to such a conclusion, for some reason, Xiaochen heaved a sigh of relief. The old man slowly opened his eyes and looked at Xiaochen. He smiled faintly and said, "I did not expect us to meet again so soon. Successor of the Thunder King, is the scabbard I gave you useful?" When Xiaochen heard this, he was startled. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He stared at the old man and said, "So, it really is you." The identity of the Thunder King's successor was Xiaochen's most sensitive identity. When he heard this person mention it again, he quickly placed his right hand on the saber hilt. He gathered his aura and prepared to make a move at any moment. The old man smiled faintly and said, "There is no need to be nervous. If I wanted to harm you, I would not have given you this scabbard that day. Otherwise, the people from the Elders' Assembly would have sensed the aura of the thunder with sword long ago and killed you on the spot." Although Xiaochen said that, he did not lower his guard at all. The feeling of having his life in someone else's hands made him very uncomfortable. If Xiaochen understood the old man in another way, if the old man wanted to harm him, all he had to do was announce Xiaochen's identity and he would face a calamity. Xiaochen said sullenly, "In that case, why did you call me here? It can't be that you just want to meet me, right?" The old man did not answer Xiaochen's question directly. He said, "Although I cannot leave the coiling mountain rock under my feet, everything that happens in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion cannot be hidden from my eyes." "Cannot leave the rock I'm sitting on?" Xiaochen extended out his spiritual sense and looked carefully at the rock the old man was sitting on. When he scanned it with his spiritual sense, something that could not be seen with the naked eye appeared in Xiaochen's mind. On the coiling mountain rock, there were black tentacles wrapped around the old man's body like vines. The tentacles were extremely horrifying, they gave off a black demonic chi. Xiaochen withdrew his spiritual sense and looked again. However, he discovered that everything was normal, he did not see anything. So that was the case. Back then, when Biyun Peak's Song Ke came to kill his way here, the old man was unable to help. The reason was probably these black tentacles. The feeling the tentacles gave Xiaochen was similar to the Corpse King imprint that appeared in his body before. When the old man felt Xiaochen's spiritual sense, there was some astonishment in his eyes. What a strong soul energy! It is already as strong as mine. Furthermore, it seems like he is even more proficient in using it than me. Xiaochen withdrew his gaze and said indifferently, "What you can see is none of my business. I came to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion as a private person. I only came to learn listening to the sword and communicating with it. I will not cause any trouble in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Senior, please do not mention my identity as the Thunder King's inheritor." The old man's expression did not change. He smiled gently and said, "Nothing in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion can be hidden from my eyes." After saying that, the old man paused for a while. He gave Xiaochen a deep look before continuing, "This includes everything that happened in the Spirit Vein realm, which is the herb field." This time, Xiaochen was completely astonished. He did not expect such a secret to be discovered by this person in the underground world. Doesn't that mean that everything that happened in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion is under the control of this person? The old man continued, "Don't overthink this. Although I can see everything in the heavenly saber pavilion, I will not keep an eye on a person for no reason. That would exhaust a lot of energy. Most of my attention is focused on the spatial crack in the heavenly saber pavilion. I do not have time to care about you. The reason I noticed you in the spirit vein realm was because I had to deal with the heavenly wolf race's fiend king. So, I split some of my soul energy. Xiaoqin felt more at ease. However, he still did not understand. You have been talking for so long. You still have not told me why you are looking for me. Young man, don't be impatient. There are some things that cannot be explained with just a few words. The old man's expression did not change. He said indifferently, since you have received benefits from a senior of my heavenly saber pavilion and my daughter taught you listening to the sword and communicating with it, can I ask you for a favor? Help? Xiaoqin did not hesitate to ask this question. After receiving a favor, he had to repay it. This made perfect sense. He cupped his hands and said, as long as it is within my capabilities, I am willing to help. However, the heavenly saber pavilion is filled with talents. What kind of favor do they need a pawn like me to help? This was the question that Xiaoqin was truly puzzled about. Xiaoqin was not that arrogant. With his current strength, there were too many people stronger than him in the heavenly saber pavilion. He could not understand why the old man would ask him for help. Thus, Xiaoqin kept an eye out. He would only help if it was within his capabilities. If it was beyond his capabilities, he would not be able to help even if he wanted to. Naturally, it is within your capabilities. Furthermore, this is something that only you can do. Remember your promise today. What exactly did the old man want Xiaoqin to help with? When Xiaoqin left the summit, he did not know. The old man only said to remember today's promise. Making a promise for no reason at all, Xiaoqin felt somewhat depressed. However, time was of the essence. When he arrived at the dueling grounds, he started to comprehend listening to the sword and communicating with it anxiously with Lu Ryue's help. There was no time to be depressed. When he returned to his courtyard at night, he started to cultivate anxiously, learning the Lingyun saber technique. Time passed very quickly every day. There was almost no time for him to relax. Aside from cultivating, there was more cultivating. At the same time, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's annual core disciple exam entered a countdown. The entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion entered a state of bitter cultivation. Even some of the core disciples did not dare to relax. This was because, according to the rules, the low-ranked core disciples would have to fight with the ordinary disciples taking the exam. If they fought, they would lose their core disciple status. Such a rule was a form of motivation for them. They did not dare to be negligent. Chapter 218. Lingyun Mountain Range, Tianyue Peak. In a forest, a young disciple wearing Tianyue Peak's uniform was practicing his saber. His saber whistled and gave off a bright light, creating a strong wind. In one moment, this person was like a butterfly spreading its wings, agile and graceful. In the next moment, he was like a soaring eagle, looking down on everything. Everywhere the saber light passed, grass was destroyed, tree trunks bent, leaves danced on the ground, and petals fell. Everlasting startling cloud. Suddenly, the young man shouted and chopped out with his saber. The saber light on the saber condensed into a thin line and shot out with a xiu sound. The thin line of saber chi slowly thinned until it was so thin that it could not be seen with the naked eye, as though it had disappeared. However, the young man revealed a satisfied smile. He sheathed his saber with a huang dang sound. The instant the saber entered the scabbard, boom. In a straight line 500 meters in front of this person, all the trees were chopped in half. The trees fell down continuously. This was not over yet. Suddenly, a thin line of saber chi appeared in front of him. It was the saber light that he thought disappeared earlier. The instant all the trees fell, it spread out with a shua sound. Like an unfolding curtain of water, it created a layer of ripples in the air. Everywhere it passed, the surrounding trees were directly annihilated into powder, turning into dust that filled the sky and danced with the wind. Great saber technique. An old man wearing gray robes slowly walked out from the forest. He was the third elder in charge of teaching martial techniques on Tianhua Peak. When the young man saw the old man, he quickly said respectfully, "Third elder, you are too polite." The third elder revealed a faint smile and said softly, "Zhang Lai, I am not being polite. In the past few hundred years, you are the first person to be able to practice the Lingyun saber technique to great perfection and comprehend the 16th move on your own. Although you joined my Tianhua Peak midway, in my opinion, your comprehension ability and talent rank within the top 10 in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, you did not slack off in your daily cultivation, you did not waste your talent." This person was Zhang Lai, the son of the Yunyang city's Zhang family head, who had taken over Xiao Chen's spot. Hearing the elder's praise, Zhang Lai's face also revealed a smile, but his tone was still humble. "Third elder is too kind, I still have many areas that I need to improve in." The third elder nodded his head in satisfaction. He said, "It is good to be humble. However, a cultivator can be arrogant, but they must have a lofty character. I want you to help my Tianhua Peak obtain first place in this core disciple exam. Can you do it?" Zhang Lai said in a deep voice, "This disciple will definitely accomplish his mission and obtain this honor for Tianhua Peak." "Very good. There is still room for improvement in this everlasting startling cloud. There are still 7 days left before the assessment. You don't have to participate in the daily special training at Tianhua Peak. Focus on comprehending the everlasting startling cloud to the great accomplishment realm. At that time, no one in the same realm as you will be your match," the third elder said as he looked at Zhang Lai. Hearing this, Zhang Lai's face revealed a joyful expression. He had only comprehended the everlasting startling cloud for a short period of time. If he wanted to master it, he would still need some time. Right now, it could be said that the third elder had helped him greatly. "Many thanks, third elder. When the time comes, I will not disappoint you." In a dense forest in the back mountains of Qingyun Peak, Xiaoqin sheathed his saber with a huang dang sound. All the trees in a straight line a kilometer in front of him were all chopped in half. A water-like curtain of light spread out, and the surrounding trees were all crushed into powder, which danced in the air with a howl. The Lingyun saber technique is indeed worthy of being a peak earth-ranked saber technique. Its might is not much weaker than a heaven-ranked saber technique. If I can comprehend the last 2 moves, I wonder how strong it will be. As Xiaoqin looked at the scene in the forest, he felt deeply moved. After consuming the flowing light flower, the increase in comprehension far surpassed what Xiaoqin had imagined. This Lingyun saber technique had a very high requirement for comprehension. Xiaoqin had only used a week to learn the first 15 moves. Tonight, he had unintentionally comprehended the 16th move of the Lingyun saber technique, Everlasting Startling Cloud. The so-called Everlasting Startling Cloud was to retract the energy of a cultivator into a line and stretch it out endlessly. Then, it would explode out violently. In that case, what was the next move, Twisting Road Around Peak, meant? Xiaoqin leaned against a tree and entered deep thought. Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Lingyun Mountain Range, Beichen Peak, in a stone forest, a burly youth with bare arms revealed his well-built body. He was barehanded as he practiced the 8 moves of the saber technique in the stone forest. Beside him, an old man looked on expressionlessly. He did not have a saber in his hand, but he practiced the 8 moves of the saber technique: sweep, hack, push, scrape, sweep, chop, chop, and pierce. It was as though he was a treasured saber drawn from its scabbard, radiating a sharp light and revealing a murderous intent. Xiao. He took a step forward and used his palm as a saber. Then, he hacked at a 2-meter-tall rock in front of him. Shwa. There was no rumbling sound. The rock was like tofu, and a corner was shaved off. Xiao. After a few more moves, his palms moved so fast that even their shadows could not be seen. Then, he retracted his palms and gently blew out a gust of wind. The 2-meter-tall boulder immediately scattered and turned into countless tiny stones, swaying as they fell to the ground. When the old man at the side saw all this, he revealed a smile on his expressionless face. He said, "Using your body as a saber, cultivating for 10 years like a day. Now, you have finally stabilized your cultivation at small perfection. Not bad." The expression on the youth's squarish face did not change. There was no joy or sorrow, he was like a block of wood. "Unfortunately, my cultivation realm is too slow. Even at the age of 19 this year, I am only an inferior grade martial Grand Master." Reaching the realm of inferior grade martial Grand Master at the age of 19. In the world below the mountain, such a talent would be considered a genius no matter where he went. However, in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, where geniuses filled the mountain, such talent was very poor. Furthermore, there was the danger of being expelled from the sect. According to the rules of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, if one was not able to reach the realm of inferior grade martial saint by the age of 25, they would be expelled from the inner sect. If one wanted to continue cultivating in the Lingyun mountain range, they would have to pay a certain amount of spirit stones every month. The old man said, "Mu Heng, from the day you chose this path, you should have known which path you chose. You have to endure the loneliness of ordinary people. If you can accomplish something before the age of 30, you should be thankful. The first half of your life is destined to be a nobody." The person called Mu Heng chose a different path from most cultivators. He turned himself into a saber, using his body to prove his Tao. He almost completely gave up on cultivating his essence. Instead, he continuously cultivated the strength of his physical body, polishing himself into a treasured saber with an exceptional sharpness. There were many ways to reach the peak of martial cultivation. Most cultivators chose to prove their Tao by using weapons or by relying on their fists. They cultivated all sorts of saber techniques, sword techniques, and fist techniques. They used all sorts of cultivation techniques to increase their strength. They relied on their comprehension of weapons and fists to climb to the peak of martial cultivation. There were also a few people who could not condense a martial spirit. They completely gave up on cultivating their essence and did their best to temper their physical body, using their physical body to prove their Tao. As for the path that Mu Heng chose, he used his body to prove his Tao and his weapon to prove his Tao. The path he chose was much more difficult than the other two. However, once he succeeded, his name would shake the world. There was a saying, "If you don't cry, you will shock the world with a single brilliant feat. If you don't fly, you will soar into the sky with a single leap." This was the principle of the Saber Emperor taking this path back then. Mu Heng took out a set of clothes that he had placed on a rock. He said softly to the old man, "Father, I want to participate in the core disciple exam this time." The old man revealed a bewildered expression, "You want to participate in the core disciple exam? With my status as the Beichen Peak's peak master, there is no need for you to participate in the exam. The status of a core disciple is not essential to you." Mu Heng said indifferently, "I just want to prove myself. All these years, I have heard too many rumors. Aren't they all saying that you raised a trash son? I will take the first rank in this exam and show them." The old man smiled faintly and said casually, "There is no need to care about the words of a vile person. You just have to cultivate properly. Your future accomplishments will be so great that the entire Great Qin nation will not be able to contain your footsteps." After the Beichen Peak's peak master spoke, he turned around and left. Mu Heng was somewhat dissatisfied. He called out, "Father, I have to prove my worth. I want to have a big battle to understand my true strength." The old man stopped and entered deep thought. After a while, a voice came out, "Let me think about it." As the date of the annual core disciple exam approached, the atmosphere in the entire Lingyun mountain range became increasingly heavy. The days slowly went by. Soon, there were only 3 days left before the exam. Qingyun Peak, Dueling Grounds, Lu Ryue frowned slightly and asked, "Failed again?" Shaoqin slowly walked out of the ancient absolute saber formation. He smiled bitterly and said, "I managed to touch the edge. However, I am still unable to open the door." For close to half a month, Lu Ruiyue had used all sorts of methods, trying to forcefully help Xiaoqun comprehend the state of listening to the sword and communicating with it. However, all of them ended in failure. There was no effect at all. The only thing that had any effect was the ancient absolute saber formation. The other state of thunder that Xiaoqun comprehended improved significantly. As he continued to comprehend this state of thunder, Xiaoqun vaguely felt that he had touched the edge of listening to the sword and communicating with it. However, he could not be sure. Thus, he kept this method to himself. When Lu Ruiyue heard this, she was somewhat dispirited. She said, "Since ancient times, I have never heard of someone comprehending listening to the sword and communicating with it with an external force. Maybe I was too optimistic at the start, or maybe I am too useless." When Xiaoqun saw the situation, he quickly consoled her, "Elder sister Ruiyue, you have already done enough. Don't say that. Otherwise, I will feel bad." When Lu Ruiyue heard this, she revealed a bitter smile. She said, "There are still 3 more days to the core disciple exam. Go and prepare. Don't try to comprehend listening to the sword and communicating with it for the next few days. I will make use of this time to think of other methods." When Xiaoqun heard this, he nodded. The day of the core disciple exam was approaching. It was time for him to settle down and summarize what he had learned in the past few days. "Yi Chen, did you fail again?" Lu Suifeng slowly walked over while holding a saber in his hand. Chapter 219. After Lu Suifeng came down from the top of the mountain that day, it was clear that he was working harder than usual. He had not left Qingyun Peak for the past half a month. Lu Ruiyue felt that this sudden change was strange. She asked Xiaoqun what was going on. Xiaoqun thought that Lu Suifeng did not want his sister to know about this, so he could only say that he did not know. Xiaoqun nodded helplessly. He thought of something and took out a flowing light flower from his universe ring and handed it to Lu Suifeng. "This is for you. Before the exam, it should be able to help you." Lu Suifeng received the flowing light flower that was glowing with a golden light. He asked suspiciously, "What flower is this? What a dense fragrance." A dense fragrance spread out and immediately attracted Lu Ruiyue's attention. When she saw the flowing light flower in Lu Suifeng's hands, she revealed an astonished expression. She walked over and asked in astonishment, "Flowing light flower? Yi Chen, where did you get it?" "Hey, this is not an ordinary flowing light flower. It is a natural treasure close to immortal grade." Lu Ruiyue paused for a while. The expression on her face turned from astonishment to shock. She snatched the flowing light flower from Lu Suifeng's hands and handed it to Xiaoqun. "Yi Chen, this flowing light flower is too precious. Suifeng cannot accept it from you." Flowing light flower. Lu Suifeng's expression changed, the legendary flowing light flower that can increase one's comprehension ability, allowing one to be reborn. Xiaoqun waved his hand and took out another flowing light flower. "I obtained this in the fortuitous encounter underground. I have already consumed one, there is no point in continuing to consume it. There is still one left for elder sister Ruiyue to break through to Martial King. I will give it to you now as well." Lu Ruiyue had never been a pretentious person. After she heard the whole story, she received it and gratefully said to Xiaoqun, "We siblings owe you a favor." Lu Suifeng's expression turned serious. He clenched his right fist and punched Xiaoqun. "Brother, I will remember this favor. With this flowing light flower, I should be able to break through to Martial Saint by the end of the year without any problems. Who knows, I might be able to comprehend something in these 3 days. I might be able to practice the mountain-splitting saber technique to great perfection and pass the exam to become a core disciple." 3 days later, in the back mountain of Qingyun Peak. Twists and turns. Within the forest, Xiaoqun remained in his original position. He turned around and quickly dashed forward. The saber in his hand drew an arc and a strong shockwave appeared in the surroundings, extending towards the snow-white blade of the lunar shadow saber. The aura on Xiaoqun's body condensed continuously. After a while, a small mountain peak appeared behind Xiaoqun. His aura suddenly rose to the peak, as if he was standing on the peak of the mountain. That's not right. The concept of the twisting road around peak is not like this. Xiaochen suddenly shook his head in his heart. The twisting road around peak refers to when the situation has reached a dead end and an unexpected ending suddenly appears. But the concept I'm executing now is simply one that has arrived at a hopeless situation. Instead, its imposing aura is ferocious, and it's advancing triumphantly. In this way, how could there possibly be any room to turn back? Doubts arose in Xiaochen's heart, and the aura that he had gathered also leaked out. The small mountain behind him also instantly disappeared into nothingness. Xiaochen sheathed his saber and stood upright. His complexion was somewhat pale. This was the backlash of failing to execute the move. Never mind, it looks like it is not time yet. This is just a core disciple exam. With my strength, even if I did not comprehend the 16th move of the Lingyun saber technique, it is more than enough for me to pass, Xiaochen said after he adjusted the chaotic essence in his body. Early the next morning, Lu Riyue and Lu Suifeng had already arrived at Xiaochen's courtyard. A green bird landed quietly beside the two of them. Let's go, I will not be accompanying you to the core disciple exam. Suifeng already knows the location. I wish you all good luck, Lu Riyue smiled faintly at Xiaochen, who had just come out. Xiaochen nodded and leaped onto the green bird that Lu Suifeng was riding. The green bird flapped its wings ferociously, creating a huge shockwave as it soared into the sky. It welcomed the rising sun and flew towards the east. As the wind blew past Lu Suifeng's ears, Xiaochen stood behind him. He could feel that Lu Suifeng's aura was much stronger than it was 3 days ago. He said, "Congratulations, your strength should have increased significantly in these 3 days." Lu Suifeng revealed a satisfied smile, "And, it is all thanks to the flowing light flower that you gave me. I have already practiced the mountain-splitting saber technique to small perfection in 3 days. With this earth-ranked saber technique, I am confident that I can become a core disciple this year." Is the core disciple exam very difficult? Why do I feel that the strength of the core disciples is not that great? Xiaochen asked as he stood behind Lu Suifeng. Lu Suifeng's expression sank. He nodded and said, "It is very difficult. In the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion, there are less than 5,000 inner disciples. With your strength, it should not be a problem for you to become a core disciple. As for why you have not met any strong core disciples, it is because they are out on experiential training. They will not return to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion until the end of the year." Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Heaven Viewing Platform. On a drill ground, the spectator stands of the drill ground were already filled with inner disciples. These were all here to watch the excitement of the annual core disciple exam. In the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, this was only second to the ranking war at the end of the year. Most people would put down what they were doing on this day. Even if they did not participate in the exam, they would come to watch the excitement. There were 10 elders seated on the tall platform. These were all people from the elders' assembly of the main hall. They were the ones who truly held power in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. The 7 peak masters sat quietly at the side. They all had calm expressions on their faces. However, no one knew what they were thinking in their hearts. Core disciples were a scarce resource in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Even the peak masters of each peak could not directly appoint them. In order to become a core disciple, one had to pass the test set by the main hall. There was a very intuitive way to judge which peak was the strongest. Whichever peak had the most core disciples would be the strongest. Currently, of the 7 peaks of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, the strongest was naturally Tianyue Peak. Of the 500 core disciple slots, Tianyue Peak occupied half of them, more than 200. Aside from Qingyun Peak, which only existed in name, and Jade Maiden Peak, which only had female disciples, the strength of the other 5 peaks was about the same. There was not much of a difference. Song Ke, who was left with only one arm, did not have much color in his eyes. His arm had been chopped off. He had already given up on his ambition to become the pavilion master. Suddenly, he rolled his eyes and looked at the incomparably calm Tianyue Peak's peak master, Ling Tianzheng. He smiled and said, I'm afraid senior brother Leng will take the top spot in this core disciple exam. I wonder how many Tianyue Peak disciples are participating in the exam this time. Ling Tianzheng looked at Song Ke and smiled coldly in his heart. He revealed a gentle smile on his face and said indifferently, about 100, I'm not too sure. When the other peak masters heard this, their expressions changed slightly. There were only 50 slots for the core disciple exam every year. Unless there were exceptional talents, there would not be any more slots. The inner disciples who wanted to participate in the exam had to become a superior grade martial grand master before the age of 19. The other peaks had at most 20-odd disciples who could meet this requirement. Compared to the number of Tianyue Peak, they were not worth mentioning. If they were to compete, they would not be able to win. It seemed that Tianyue Peak would take at least half of the core disciple slots this time. The stipend and treatment that a core disciple received was more than twice that of an ordinary inner disciple. Their cultivation speed was also much faster. If all the slots were taken by Tianyue Peak, then for a long time in the future, the strength of their peaks would not be able to surpass Tianyue Peak. They could only be suppressed. Thinking of this, the peak masters of the other peaks exchanged glances. They could see a helpless expression in each other's eyes. A cold look flashed in Song Ke's eyes. He casually glanced at Lu Riyue and said, however, I'm afraid no one from senior brother Leng's Tianyue Peak will be able to obtain the first rank. The Wanren Peak's peak master, Wan Feng, asked in confusion, why? The first rank for the past few years seems to be from Tianyue Peak. Song Ke looked coldly at Lu Riyue and smiled, it looks like junior brother Wan is not aware of some things. Your peak's core disciple, Yang Qi, was already defeated by Peak Master Lu's new disciple in the Hall of Contributions. Furthermore, he did not even use 100 moves. There is also that quick saber Lin Feng. He is even more laughable. He was defeated with one punch. Wan Feng revealed a suspicious expression. He had been in closed-door cultivation all year round. If it were not for the core disciple exam being an important matter, he would not have come out. Hence, he did not understand what was going on in the mountains. Wan Feng tilted his head slightly and asked an elder of Wanren Peak behind him, Elder Su, is there such a thing? Elder Su's expression was somewhat unsightly. However, he still told Wan Feng everything he knew in full detail. After he heard everything, Wan Feng's expression turned sullen. He looked at Lu Riyue and said, I have not come out for some time. I did not expect Qingyun Peak to have a successor. Lu Riyue was expressionless. She knew that Song Ke was trying to sow discord. She looked at Song Ke coldly and said indifferently, you only have one hand left, yet you are still so vicious. Be careful of biting your tongue. Just as Song Ke was about to say something, Ling Tianzheng looked at him in disgust, Junior brother Song, it is best that you worry about your own matters. Don't bother with other people's matters. At this moment, the Jade Maiden Peak's peak master, who had been silent all this while, said, Senior brother Song, there is no need to be so decisive. Yang Qi's strength is not considered top-notch among the core disciples. It is not a big deal for him to be defeated by an inner disciple. Such things happen every year in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Furthermore, the process of how he defeated Lin Feng with one punch is worth discussing. There is no need to be too shocked. The most important thing is that I heard that a new disciple appeared in Tianyue Peak recently. He managed to practice the Lingyun Saber technique to great perfection, which no one in the past 100 years has managed to practice to great perfection. He actually practiced the Lingyun Saber technique to great perfection. When the others heard this, they all revealed shocked expressions. This was equivalent to a peak earth-ranked saber technique. If he could practice it to great perfection, no one in the same cultivation realm would be his match. Chapter 220. Leng Tianjing smiled faintly, and looked meaningfully at the Beichin Peak's lord, who was like a block of wood. He said, Junior Sister Chu's news is as fast as ever. However, the core disciple competition this time is more exciting than before. You'll know once you continue watching. Whether Zhang Lai will be able to take first place is still unknown. Everyone did not understand what Ling Tianjing meant. Could it be that with a peak Earth-ranked saber technique, he would not be able to obtain the first rank? A black warship slowly flew over from the horizon. With a so sound, it landed on the drill grounds. The people from Tianyue Peak are here. Indeed, Tianyue Peak is still as strong as before. There are actually more than 100 inner disciples participating in the exam. Looks like the first rank will be taken away by Tianyue Peak again. There is another warship flying over from that direction. The people from Beichin Peak are coming. The people from Jade Maiden Peak are here as well. There are so many female disciples. Soon, aside from Qingyun Peak's Xiao Chen and Lu Suifeng, the disciples of the other 5 peaks all disembarked on their warships. They stood at the side and formed 5 formations. Of the 5 formations, Tianyue Peak had the most people. These Tianyue Peak inner disciples looked at the disciples of the other peaks with arrogance on their faces. They seemed very pleased with themselves, as though the core disciple exam was already in their bag. Zhang Lai, who was in the crowd, had a calm expression on his face. He swept his gaze across all the participants of the inner disciple exam, observing the situation of his competitors. With one glance, most of these people were early inferior grade martial grand masters. A small portion of them were middle inferior grade martial grand masters. Only a few of them were peak martial grand masters. These people were worthy of his attention. However, when cultivators were of the same cultivation realm, they would compete on martial techniques and actual combat experience. Zhang Lai's combat experience was already very plentiful even before he ascended the mountain. In the vicinity of Yunyang City, if not 100 cultivators had died at his hands, there were at least dozens. In the battles between the big clans in the city, Zhang Lai often fought on the front lines. In terms of combat experience, he definitely had more than these Heavenly Saber Pavilion inner disciples. He had a clear advantage. If it was a competition of martial techniques, his advantage was even more obvious. The Lingyun saber technique was originally a top-notch earth-tier saber technique. However, because it was difficult to learn and lacked 3 moves, it was demoted to an earth-tier saber technique. Now that he had cultivated it to the greater mastery stage, and had even comprehended the 16th move, he had an overwhelming advantage over these people. Seems like there's no pressure on me to get first place this time, Zhang Lai thought to himself. But at this moment, he felt a blazing gaze, as sharp as the edge of a blade, piercing through the air and shooting towards him. Zhang Lai looked in the direction of that gaze and saw an ordinary-looking cultivator. When he used his perception to check, he could not help but be astonished. How could a person with such an intense gaze only be an inferior grade martial grand master? How could an inferior grade martial grand master appear in the core disciple exam? Zhang Lai thought suspiciously in his heart. At this moment of doubt, when he raised his head to look for the owner of the Dao gaze, he could not find him. Mu Heng, who was in the crowd, withdrew his gaze and smiled faintly. His aura was completely gone. His squarish, ordinary face was no different from a passerby in the crowd. It was very ordinary, without any fluctuations. That gaze seemed to have never appeared at all. Zhang Lai looked around, trying to find the owner of that gaze. The gaze came from the Beichin Peak disciples. There was a total of 20 Beichin Peak disciples participating in the core disciple exam. Logically speaking, if he had seen that person before, he should have been able to find that person among these 20 people easily with his memory. However, the current situation was very strange. He counted the 20 people one by one, but he could not find the Beichin Peak disciple who was only an inferior grade martial grand master. Could I be hallucinating? After a long time, Zhang Lai could not help but suspect that it was his own doing. His emotions became restless for a moment. Junior brother Zhang, are you all right? When a Tianyue Peak senior brother saw that Zhang Lai was distracted, he asked out of goodwill, "Don't lose your composure before the big battle." Zhang Lai recovered his wits and thought to himself, I was indeed overly concerned. Who cares what gaze it is? When the time comes, we will meet again. I just have to keep an eye on it. Thank you, senior brother. That's right, senior brother Wu Bing, you have participated in the core disciple exam before. Can you tell me how the exam will be conducted later? Zhang Lai cupped his hands in thanks and changed the topic. Although Zhang Lai was a newly promoted inner disciple of Tianyue Peak, his talent and strength were not to be underestimated. His future would be limitless. Wu Bing had interjected because he wanted to befriend Zhang Lai. When he heard the question, he immediately told him what he knew. The core disciple exam is split into the foundational stage and the arena battles. The foundational stage is different every year, so I do not know what will be tested in the foundational stage. The arena battles have not changed every year. The cultivators who passed the foundational stage will fight against each other, leaving only the top 50 inner disciples. I heard that the sect will reward the top 10 inner disciples. In the end, there is one more battle. It is between the last 50 inner disciples. Everyone has to choose a person to fight against. If they lose, they will lose their core disciple status. Zhang Lai nodded, so that's how it is. I wonder what will be tested in the foundational stage this year. For some reason, the chief examiner sent by the main hall had not come down yet. The group of people had been standing under the scorching sun for a long time. Gradually, they started to get impatient. What's going on? Why isn't it starting yet? The sun is making me dizzy. Ha, I am fine. I cultivate a fire-attributed cultivation technique. The longer I stay under the sun, the more boring it is to wait. What exactly is going on? Do you guys know? Not everyone is here yet. If not, the chief examiner will not come. Who is so troublesome? He is putting on airs. He actually wants so many of us to wait for him. It seems like the people from Qingyun Peak are not here yet. I heard that Qingyun Peak recently accepted a very powerful inner disciple. He defeated Quick Saber Lin Feng in one move. Is that true? Lin Feng's strength is within the top 10 of all the core disciples. As the group of people spoke, a black dot appeared in the eastern sky. The black dot slowly grew larger. When everyone saw it clearly, they discovered that it was a huge green bird. Lu Suifeng was very bad at piloting the green bird. Xiao Chen was not prepared at all. After he flew for a long time, he realized that he was flying in the wrong direction. Lu Suifeng looked at the drill grounds on the ground and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He smiled, Brother Yi, we are definitely right this time. Look at the expressions of the people on the ground when they look at us. You can see how excited they are. Yi Chen extended out his spiritual sense and immediately heard what the group of people on the ground said. He was speechless, they are very excited. However, they are very excited when they scold us. Xiao. The green bird flapped its wings and slowly landed on the flat ground of the drill grounds. Xiao Chen and Lu Suifeng immediately jumped down. The two of them were rather thick-skinned. They ignored the gazes of the crowd. Bang! 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 Not long after Xiao Chen and Lu Suifeng landed, 3 gray-robed old men jumped down from a tall platform in the distance. They created 3 shockwaves in the air and glided for a few hundred meters before landing firmly on the ground. A middle-aged man with a square face walked out from the 3 of them. He was a peak martial saint and had a flourishing aura. The light in his eyes was withdrawn as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Everyone felt a slight pressure. I am your chief examiner. This year's exam is the same as the previous years. It will be split into the foundational stage and the arena battles, the middle-aged man with a square face said in a deep voice. His voice was very loud, everyone could hear him clearly. Dang! Dang dang! The chief examiner waved his hand and the 2 people beside him took out black rocks that were as tall as a person from their spatial rings. Soon, a stone forest appeared in the drill grounds. There were no patterns on the surface of the rocks. It gave off a calm and grand atmosphere. The first stage will test your strength. You need to use your saber to break apart one of these rocks. Remember, you only have one chance. If you fail, you will be eliminated, the chief examiner said expressionlessly to the crowd. After that, the two deputy examiners at the sides started to hand out numbers to the rest of the people. They lined up according to the order of their numbers and began the exam. Xiaoqun received his number and looked at it. Number 240. It was one of the last numbers. In the entire drill grounds, there were only about 300 people participating in the exam. After the number was handed out, the person from Tianyue Peak slowly walked into the stone forest. He looked at the black rocks that were as tall as a person and did not pay much attention to them. After a martial grand master condensed a saber light and struck with all their might, they could shatter the rocks into countless pieces. Furthermore, this was without using a martial technique. If they used a martial technique, the might would be even greater. Xiaoqun drew his saber and spots of red light gathered on the saber. This person cultivated a fire-attributed cultivation technique. Fire-attributed cultivation techniques were known for their ferocious might. There should not be any problems. Shatter for me. This Tianyue Peak disciple shouted loudly and leaped into the air. The saber light descended from the sky, looking very imposing. However, when the saber light landed on the black rocks, it gave off a keng-chang sound. There was not even a crack on the rock. How could it be like this? When the saber light dissipated, this person looked at the black rocks that did not have any marks on them. His eyes were filled with confusion. The chief examiner struck out with his palm and the rock that was as hard as iron was shattered into countless pieces. He said indifferently, "Number 1 failed, step down." "No, I cannot step down. I am already 19 this year. If I fail again, I will never have another chance. Please give me another chance. I did not use a martial technique. If I used a martial technique, I would definitely be able to do it," this person pleaded anxiously to the chief examiner. The chief examiner waved his hand and a shockwave surged out. This person was immediately thrown into the air by a huge force and landed outside the drill grounds. I said it very clearly, everyone only has one chance. I do not wish to repeat myself, so I will tell everyone else. Hu Qi. Suddenly, a black dart was shot out from the high platform of the drill grounds. The chief examiner gently caught the dart and removed the note on it. After a while, he said, "I just received the rules. The first stage does not allow the use of martial techniques. If you do, you will be disqualified as well." Chapter 221. The moment the news came out, the drill grounds burst into an uproar. Everyone present already knew that this black rock was not an ordinary rock. It was not simple, it was several times harder than ordinary rocks. Their hearts were already beating like drums. When they heard that they were not allowed to use martial techniques, they found it unbelievable. Not only did the inner disciples find it unbelievable, even the two vice examiners beside the chief examiner had shocked expressions on their faces. They were very clear on the origins of the black rock. Even the two of them would have to use a quarter of their strength to chop it in half. The chief examiner's face turned black as he said sullenly, "Silence, continue the test. If you continue to make a ruckus, I will use my own method to silence you." Although there were still people who were dissatisfied, under the might of the chief examiner, no one dared to say anything. Candidate number 2 walked out with a grave expression. This person was rather smart. After he walked around the black rock, he asked the chief examiner, "May I touch this rock?" The chief examiner nodded, "Yes, but you cannot use your essence to cheat. Do not take too long either." This person quickly touched the surface of the rock. He was clearly very cautious. After a while, he withdrew his hand and slowly drew his saber. Dang! Without any hesitation, he decisively gathered his chi and made his move in one breath. There was no hesitation at all. With a schwa sound, the saber broke through the top of the rock and sliced downwards continuously. A joyful expression appeared on this person's face. He could not help but increase the force in his hand. Ka. When the saber was a quarter of the way to the bottom of the rock, it suddenly got stuck. No matter how much force this person used, the saber could not move forward nor could it be pulled out. It was completely stuck. Bang! The chief examiner sent out another palm strike. The palm strike flew through the air, creating a sonic boom in the air. The black boulder that was as tall as a person suddenly shattered into pieces. The saber in that person's hand loosened. He could not withstand the inertia and was forced back a few steps before he could stabilize himself. Candidate number 2, you do not pass. Candidate number 3, continue, the chief examiner said unhurriedly while that person had an expression of dissatisfaction on his face. It was indeed a pity that he was so close to splitting the black boulder in half. Unfortunately, he was so close that he did not succeed in the end. Xiaochen watched the examinee number 2 leave dejectedly. His expression turned grave as well. Why is this test so strict? That person is a middle-stage superior grade martial grand master. If they were unable to use their martial skills, most of the people present would probably face the same fate, being eliminated in the first round. Xiaochen turned his gaze to the high platform. There was an old man sitting in the middle of the platform. He looked senile, but his blood and qi were soaring. Even from a distance, one could feel his strong and long life aura. This person was the first elder of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's main hall's Elders' Assembly, Jiang Qi. He held the highest position in the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion. He was the one who threw the dart earlier. Xiaochen had a suspicious look in his eyes. What is this old man thinking? The first stage is already so difficult. Are you trying to eliminate all of us? What is the first elder thinking? Why did he suddenly increase the difficulty by so much? The Wanren Peak's peak master asked suspiciously from the other side of the high platform. If this goes on, I'm afraid it will be a problem if we can even select 10 core disciples. What exactly happened? Senior brother Leng, you have the best relationship with the first elder. Do you know any inside information? The core disciple exam this time was indeed strange. Even the peak masters did not know such a change would occur. Leng Tianyue frowned slightly and glanced at the first elder Jiang Qi. He muttered to himself, could it be because of that? Looks like I have to make some preparations after the exam ends. When the Jade Maiden Peak's peak master, Chu Shangyun, saw Leng Tianyue muttering to himself, she said, Senior brother Leng, do you really know any inside information? Tell us about it. Leng Tianyue smiled embarrassedly and shook his head, don't overthink it. What inside information could I possibly know? Let's just continue watching. Clearly, the crowd did not believe his words. However, since Leng Tianyue did not want to say it, they could not force him. Everyone was of the same status, they could not force him. Lu Ryue's pretty face was filled with doubt. She was not sure what had happened. She looked into the distance and saw Xiaochen on the drill grounds. She muttered to herself, I hope nothing bad happened. The blazing sun hung high in the sky. Occasionally, there would be dispirited sounds coming from the drill grounds. The first stage of the exam had already been going on for a while. However, only 10 people had passed. Furthermore, these 10 people were peak superior grade martial grand masters. Their foundations were very solid. They were able to split the black rock in half in one breath. Number 100, Tianyue Peak's Zhang Lai. The chief examiner read out loudly. It's Zhang Lai. Zhang Lai is coming out. I have long heard of this person's name. Recently, he has been rising very quickly in Tianyue Peak. I heard he is the son of the clan head of the top clan in Yunyang City, the Zhang clan. He has a good family background and high talent. As long as such a person is willing to work hard, he will definitely become strong. He is already a strong person. Tianyue Peak holds a competition every month. Among the ordinary inner disciples, no one in Tianhua Peak is a match for him. To be able to obtain the first rank among the inner disciples of the strongest faction in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he is basically guaranteed to be the first rank in this exam. Haha, it is too early to say this. Let's wait for him to pass this stage first. If he cannot even pass this stage, he will not even be able to obtain the qualifications to be a core disciple. The moment Zhang Lai appeared, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. The ordinary inner disciples in the spectator stands all started discussing him. In a distant spectator stand, a group of Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciples with 3 golden lines on their sleeves also paid attention and looked at the drill grounds. These core disciples were the last 50 core disciples. After Zhang Lai and the others completed the 3 stages, they would have to choose their opponents and fight to determine their core disciple status. Zhang Lai. I hope I do not meet with this person later, a Beichen Peak core disciple said worriedly as he looked at Zhang Lai. Another core disciple added, it would be great if he could not pass the foundational stage. That way, we would be completely at ease. The 50 core disciples all had some uneasiness on their faces. After all, after enjoying the superior treatment of a core disciple, if they were to return to being an ordinary inner disciple, they would not be able to accept such a huge difference in their hearts. Only one person had a calm expression, resting with his eyes closed. He held a saber in his hands and hugged it in front of his chest. He did not pay any attention to the sounds around him. It was as though everything had nothing to do with him, he was incomparably indifferent. Zhang Lai slowly walked to a black rock. He withdrew his aura and did not release it. His gaze was incomparably calm. After a while, his aura suddenly became sharp. A bright light flashed in his eyes, it was like a sharp saber being unsheathed, showing off its sharpness. Ka-Xie. A black boulder standing in front of Zhang Lai suddenly shattered, turning into countless stone fragments that flew everywhere in the air. Zhang Lai waved his hand and sent out a palm wind. An intense qi whirlwind appeared in front of him. The stone shards flying at him fell to the ground and scattered. What's going on? Why did the rock shatter? The surrounding examinees all thought in astonishment. They did not even see when Zhang Lai made his move. Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with astonishment as well. What's going on? He was 100% sure that Zhang Lai did not draw his saber, but the hard rock shattered just like that. Saber intent. These 2 words suddenly appeared in Xiao Chen's mind. This was definitely a state of the saber. Furthermore, Zhang Lai had comprehended this saber intent to small perfection. Congratulations senior brother Leng, you have accepted another good disciple. He actually managed to comprehend his own saber intent at such a young age. His future is limitless. Tianhua Peak is really full of talents. How enviable. Small perfection saber intent. It seems like the Heavenly Saber Pavilion has not had such a genius in the past few hundred years. Leng Tianhua smiled faintly as he replied to the other peak masters. However, he was very surprised in his heart. He knew that Zhang Lai had comprehended saber intent. Originally, Leng Tianhua thought that Zhang Lai would use it as a trump card. He did not expect Zhang Lai to use it right from the start. Why? Given Zhang Lai's character, he would not be so ostentatious. On the drill grounds, Zhang Lai suddenly turned his head back. A bright light shone in his eyes. He had finally caught the sharp gaze from earlier. What he saw was an extremely ordinary squarish face. Mu Heng revealed a slightly astonished expression. After a while, he smiled at Zhang Lai in relief. Then, he withdrew his gaze and turned back into an unremarkable passerby. Zhang Lai imprinted Mu Heng's appearance in his heart. He thought to himself, I finally found you. I did not expose my trump card in vain. You put pressure on me, I can do the same to you. Chopping the hard black rock in half without using a martial technique was not difficult for Zhang Lai. However, before he went up, he remembered the sharp gaze that tore through the air. Although he told himself to forget about this gaze, no matter how much he tried to comfort himself, this gaze had already left a mark in his heart. If he didn't resolve it perfectly, he would never be able to. If he did not deal with it perfectly, he might leave behind a heart demon during a fight. Thus, Zhang Lai chose to reveal his trump card. He calculated that the other party's gaze would leak out unintentionally. The development of the matter was exactly as Zhang Lai expected. Number 2, Zhang Lai, pass the test. Next. The test continued and the number of people who failed increased. The number of people who failed in the first stage far surpassed the previous ones. This was something that everyone did not expect. By the time number 200 was reported, there were actually 60 people who successfully chopped the rock in half. The high elimination rate caused everyone to be flabbergasted. Number 220, Beichen Peaks Mu Heng. The chief examiner continued to read. Mu Heng passed through the crowd and slowly walked out. He was like an unremarkable little blade of grass. Initially, no one noticed him. Now that he walked forward, everyone's gazes were focused on him. Chapter 222. What's going on? This person is actually only an inferior grade martial grand master. Very quickly, someone sensed his cultivation realm and could not help but exclaim. The most basic requirement of the core disciple exam was that inner disciples had to be a superior grade martial grand master before the age of 19. Many inner disciples were stuck at this threshold. When they saw that Mu Heng was only an inferior grade martial grand master, they all started to doubt him. The chief examiner was expressionless as he looked at the restless crowd. Under the blazing sun, when the crowd felt his gaze, they felt a chill run down their spines. If you have any doubts, please seek an explanation from the elders' assembly after the exam is over. Whoever is making a ruckus, scram immediately. Mu Heng's ordinary face did not change because of the words of the others. He walked straight to a rock and took a deep breath. Xiao. Mu Heng raised his right hand and used it as a saber. He tilted his body slightly and chopped down. The air was like a curtain of water as it was split by Mu Heng's palm. The black rock was slowly sliced in half. Mu Heng's movements were very slow. It was a stark contrast to Zhang Lai's ferocious saber intent. Everyone could see it clearly and were dumbfounded. The mysterious black rock that even a superior grade martial grand master would find hard to cut with their full strength was actually easily sliced in half by an inferior grade martial grand master. This was out of everyone's expectations. The people who were originally critical of Mu Heng's participation in the core disciple exam were now completely speechless. All that was left in their hearts was shock. Mu Heng withdrew his hand and a small crack appeared in the middle of the black rock. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to discover that the rock had already been split in half. Bang! The chief examiner sent out another palm strike and shattered the rock. He said, Number 220, Beichen Peaks Mu Heng, pass. Mu Heng looked at Zhang Lai's gaze and smiled faintly before walking out. Xiao Chen looked at Mu Heng's back and entered deep thought. This was the first time he saw someone cultivate the physical body to such a strong level. Mu Heng's strength might not be as strong as Xiao Chen's, but his ability to use the strength of his physical body was much stronger than Xiao Chen's. If it was Xiao Chen, he would have no problem shattering this black rock with a full power strike of 6,000 kilograms. However, it was impossible to do what Mu Heng did, to control his strength to a point like a blade, like a thin stream or a cloud. It's fine. There are all sorts of ways to cultivate the physical body, just like martial techniques. I was just making a fuss over nothing, Xiao Chen smiled faintly. After he thought it through, he thought to himself. Number 240, Qing Yun Pixi Chen. After a long time, it was finally Xiao Chen's turn. Lu Suifeng's number was 280th, even further behind Xiao Chen's. When he heard Xiao Chen's name, he said encouragingly, Brother Yi, do your best. When Lu Suifeng heard Xiao Chen's name, he could no longer hold back the hatred in his eyes. He stared at Xiao Chen, wishing he could jump down and slap this person to death. When Song Ke saw Xiao Chen, he could no longer hold back the hatred hidden in his eyes. He stared at Xiao Chen, wishing he could jump down and slap this person to death. Ever since Song Ke met Xiao Chen for the first time, his originally happy life had slowly turned into a tragedy. Originally, he was only one step away from becoming one of the youngest martial monarchs in the history of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Now, not only did he have hopes of advancing to martial monarch, but because of his heart demon, he lost all hope of advancing. Furthermore, he lost an arm and his strength decreased significantly. He became a laughing stock. If it were not for the few big shots of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion protecting Xiao Chen, he would have found an opportunity to kill Xiao Chen long ago. How hateful. A minor character actually has so many connections. Song Ke clenched his remaining hand tightly as he thought to himself hatefully. Song Ke turned his head and looked at the calm Lu Ryue. He said in a gloomy voice, "Peak Master Lu, your disciple is coming out. I wonder if his performance will surpass Zhang Lai's. There should be a pleasant surprise." Lu Ryue smiled casually and turned her head. "No matter how great a pleasant surprise there is, it will not be as great as the one you lost an arm." Song Ke's expression changed. He immediately suppressed his anger and said, "That brat better not have any weakness in my hands. Otherwise, I will make him suffer a fate worse than death." Lu Ryue smiled faintly. "I do not know if my disciple will suffer a fate worse than death. However, I know that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Isn't that right, old bastard?" At the end, the smile on Lu Ryue's face vanished. She cursed fiercely. She could not stand Song Ke's endless mockery. Bang! "Girl, who are you calling an old bastard?" Song Ke smacked the table and glared at her. Lu Ryue did not show any fear. Her pretty face was covered in frost. "I'm just calling you an old bastard. So what? Do you want to fight? I don't mind teaching you some principles." Lu Ryue's talent was startling in the first place. After she completely absorbed the essence of heaven and earth that Ao Jiao gave her, she consumed the flowing light flower. Now, her strength was infinitely close to that of a martial king. She was not afraid of the one-armed Song Quebec. "The two of you, stop quarreling. Fighting in front of the elders' assembly is not good for either of you," the other peak masters quickly advised when they saw the tension between the two of them getting stronger. Leng Tianzheng looked at Song Ke and said, "Junior brother Song, you are already so old. Don't fight with the younger generation. Be more magnanimous. If you lost an arm, let's see if you would say that." Song Ke was so angry that he trembled. However, he did not dare to flare up in front of Leng Tianzheng. He did not have the guts to do so. Under the persuasion of the crowd, the commotion in the spectator stands slowly calmed down. Inside and outside the drill grounds, the ordinary inner disciples in the spectator stands and the inner disciples doing the introductions were all staring at Xiao Chen. In terms of fame, Xiao Chen had the most legends in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion recently. In the few months since he arrived at the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he first played around with the peak martial king of Bian Peak, Song Quebec. Then, he injured many Wanren Peak inner disciples in the Hall of Contributions and even defeated the core disciple, Yang Qi. After that, he disappeared for a period of time. However, after he reappeared, he became even more famous. He miraculously completed a high-level mission of the sect and obtained an excellent evaluation. His ranking soared by 500 ranks. The second-ranked core disciple of Wanren Peak, Lin Feng, wanted to take revenge. However, he was defeated with one punch and became a laughing stock. All the things that happened were unimaginable. No one dared to believe that Xiao Chen was only a martial grand master. There was another rumor saying that every time Xiao Chen made a move, he would use some tricks and go against the morals of a cultivator. Compared to the first rumor, the crowd believed the latter rumor more. Now that they had the opportunity to witness Xiao Chen make a move in public, they could verify the truth of the rumor. Zhang Lai and Mu Heng, who had already passed the test, looked at Xiao Chen with curiosity. Even though they were cultivating in the mountains, they had heard some rumors about Xiao Chen. However, the two of them were proud and arrogant people. They did not believe the rumors. This was especially so for Zhang Lai. He even snorted disdainfully. I will let you know that snatching your spot back then was a matter of course. Only the truly strong can receive the best treatment. This is an unchanging principle since ancient times. Zhang Lai grasped the saber in his hand tightly. There was a bright light in his eyes as he stared at Xiao Chen in the drill grounds. Xiao Chen's eyes were like a mirror, his heart was as calm as still water. His mind was very clear. The surrounding gazes and discussions did not affect him at all. There was only one chance and he could not use martial techniques. Xiao Chen did not dare to be careless. He carefully scanned the black rock with his spiritual sense. He discovered that the surface of this rock was extremely smooth, it was even harder than steel. However, that was not a problem. 50% of his strength should be enough. Feeling confident, Xiao Chen drew his saber decisively. He withdrew his saber light and sent out a saber light. Xiao! The sharp saber light flashed in the air. With a huang dang sound, Xiao Chen sheathed his saber. There were no changes to the surface of the black rock, which was surprising. Ha 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 ha! I was wondering how powerful it was. It turns out that it is only a so-so. What a pleasant surprise. Song Kei's eyes were like lightning as he stared at the black rock. Originally, he thought that this would not be a problem for Xiao Chen. However, when he took a closer look, he discovered that there were no changes to the surface of the rock. It looked like even horses stumble. This brat was too careless. It was such a good opportunity to mock him. Without even thinking, Song Kei started laughing loudly. Hua! The moment Song Kei spoke, there was a crisp ka-cie sound as though it was responding to Song Quebec. The black rock split into two halves. The intense energy was like a hurricane. It tossed the two pieces of rock into the air. After they flew for a long time, they landed heavily on the ground. Number 240, Qingyun Peak Xiao Chen, passed. After the rock landed, the chief examiner's voice rang out. Song Kei's face alternated between green and red. He did not know where to put his face. He felt that he was slowly turning from a laughingstock to a joke. This time, Lu Ryue could not even be bothered to add insult to injury. She directly ignored Song Quebec. It turned out that Xiao Chen used the technique of drawing the saber in this attack. He did not have a martial spirit, so the speed at which he gathered essence was at least 50% faster than other cultivators. With a thought, the spinning chi whirlpool in his dantian immediately emitted a huge amount of essence and gathered it on the saber. With such a fast speed at which essence was gathered, in addition to the technique of drawing the saber, the speed of this attack was very fast. After all, Song Kei was quite far from the drill grounds. Furthermore, he was feeling uneasy. Even if he was a martial king, he would not be surprised to make a mistake in such a situation. Xiao Chen raised his head slightly. He felt a concerned gaze from the tall platform. He smiled at Lu Ryue, who was in the distance, and walked into the crowd of inner disciples who had already passed the test. The test on the drill grounds continued. There were people who passed the test one after another. Of course, there were even more people who failed. Soon, it was Lu Suifeng's turn. When Lu Ryue saw Lu Suifeng slowly walk out of the crowd, she felt conflicted again. Lu Suifeng was already 19 years old. If he did not pass the test, he would not have any more chances. She only had this one younger brother. She did not want to see him fail. Chapter 223. Lu Suifeng smiled faintly at Lu Ryue and nodded at Xiao Chen. Then, he quietly looked at the black rock in front of him. After consuming the flowing light flower that Xiao Chen gave him, Lu Suifeng's martial techniques and cultivation techniques had improved very quickly. He had already stabilized his cultivation as a peak superior grade martial grand master. As long as he did not make any mistakes, it should not be a problem for him to pass this stage. Open! Lu Suifeng shouted and drew the small saber at his waist. The saber gave off a blazing light as it hacked violently on the hard black rock. Z. Z. The saber cut into the rock and slid down continuously. Lu Suifeng had already succeeded halfway. However, the expression on his face did not relax at all. There were many inner disciples who had their sabers stuck in the middle of the rock after they cut it, resulting in them failing the test. The image of Wang Rong's mocking face flashed in Lu Suifeng's mind. He increased the force in his hand. With a schwa sound, he quickly split the rock in half. Qing Yun peeks Lu Suifeng, test successful. Lu Suifeng wiped the sweat off his forehead and walked over to Xiao Chen. He bumped fists with him and said joyfully, "I succeeded." "Congratulations." Xiao Chen said sincerely. Lu Suifeng withdrew his smile, "I cannot congratulate you now. There are still 2 more stages to pass. Continue to work hard. Don't be happy too early. Even if you pass the foundational stage, I will chase the 2 of you down in the arena battles." Zhang Lai suddenly walked over and stared at Xiao Chen. "Especially you. As long as I am in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, you can forget about becoming a core disciple." The current Zhang Lai could be said to be flushed with success in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. His future was boundless. The only thing he could not let go of was the matter of him entering Tianyue Peak through the back door. As long as he completely defeated Xiao Chen and proved his worth, he would be able to get rid of this worry in his heart. Originally, Xiao Chen did not have much of an impression of Zhang Lai. However, when he heard others mention Zhang Lai's identity, he immediately recalled the matter of the Zhang clan cultivators plotting against him in Evil Wind Valley. Repay kindness with kindness and take revenge with hatred. This had always been Xiao Chen's principle. No matter how the Zhang clan treated him, Xiao Chen would repay it sooner or later. It was just that he had been cultivating in Qingyun Peak and did not have the time to care about this matter. Now that Zhang Lai had delivered himself to him, Xiao Chen had no reason to let him off. He smiled faintly and said, "That is what I told you as well. Let's wait and see." Zhang Lai coldly snorted and left. After a while, the first round of the core disciple exam was finally over. The chief examiner counted the number of people and counted them carefully. Out of the 300 inner disciples, only 100 were left. The first stage of the examination had eliminated 2/3 of the people. Just thinking about it made people feel terrified. After counting the number of people, the chief examiner brought everyone to the other side of the drill ground. After they stopped, they saw a piece of land that was more than 800 meters long. It was covered with a thick layer of black cloth. It was impossible to see what was underneath the black cloth. Hua! 2 deputy examiners rushed forward and quickly removed the black cloth. Instantly, a square formation filled with spear blades appeared before everyone's eyes. The sharp spear blades faced the blazing sun and flickered with a bright light. When one looked at it, it caused their scalp to go numb. A small portion of the 2-meter-long spear blades were inserted into the ground. The 20-centimeter-long rhombus-shaped spearhead flickered with a cold light under the blazing sun. It was incomparably sharp. The distance between the spears was rather wide, about 1.5 meters. The square formation formed by tens of thousands of spears was about 1,000 meters long and 400 meters wide. The chief examiner looked at the people who passed the first stage and said, "The second stage tests movement techniques. If you can last for 2 hours on this spear formation, you will pass." The moment the chief examiner finished speaking, the expressions of the 100-odd people immediately changed. Some were happy and some were worried. Those who normally focused on movement techniques or cultivated high-ranked movement techniques had expressions of joy on their faces. Those inner disciples who focused on other aspects had unsightly expressions. To be able to enter the inner sect of Heavenly Saber Pavilion, their movement techniques were naturally not weak. However, if they did not spend a lot of time on their movement techniques, they would feel uneasy if they wanted to last for an hour on the sharp spear blades. Last for an hour? I'm afraid it is not that simple, Xiao Chen muttered to himself as he looked at the huge formation. If they only wanted to last for an hour, the range of the spear formation would not be so large. Furthermore, although it was difficult to last for an hour, if there were no external interference, he believed that most of the people present would be able to pass this test. Pooh! 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 Footsteps could be heard. 10 white-robed Jade Maiden Peak elders walked over quickly. After that, they split into groups of 3 and stood at the 4 corners of the formation. When the chief examiner saw this group of people, he said, "After you land, you lose. Aside from that, there are no other rules. The time starts now." So. Figures flashed and everyone quickly jumped up. Xiaochen leaped up gently and found a foothold. He executed the blue dragon cloud soaring art and spun around like a flood dragon before landing firmly. Pooh! There was a miserable cry. Because an inner disciple did not control his strength well, the sharp spear blade pierced through his shoes. He lost his footing and immediately fell down. The Jade Maiden Peak elders guarding at the side immediately flew over to where this person landed. They brought him out of the formation and took off his shoes and socks to treat his wounds. The sudden situation gave everyone a better understanding of the sharpness of the spear blades. They could not help but become even more cautious. Lu Suifeng leaped up gently and landed beside Xiaochen. He said in a low voice, "Yi Chen, why do I feel that something is wrong? This formation is too big. I know those Jade Maiden Peak elders. They have a very high position in Jade Maiden Peak. Furthermore, they all cultivate healing martial techniques and cultivation techniques." Xiao Chen's expression did not change. He was on high alert as he said in a deep voice, "Just adapt to the situation. This second test will definitely not be so simple." Xiao Chen was thinking further ahead. The chief examiner's last sentence also caught his attention. Did the so-called no rules mean that he could attack others as he pleased while standing on the formation? Although he did not have such a strong heart to attack, he still had to be wary of others. He had to keep an eye out. Standing on the sharp spear blades, aside from testing the strength of a cultivator's movement technique, it also required a strong mental fortitude. Otherwise, it would be very easy to lose one's footing. Just standing on the sharp spear blades alone was already difficult. If one could not maintain their balance and jumped around, the spear blades would quickly injure their ankles and cause them to fall to the ground. Thus, one could not lose their footing. If there was an unstable situation, one could not jump onto the other spear blades. One had to calm down first and stabilize one's footing. The blazing sun hung high in the sky and the harsh sunlight mercilessly shone on everyone. There was not even a slight breeze in the huge drill grounds. It was very frustrating. A few inner disciples lost their footing due to their frustration. They had no choice but to jump onto the spear formation. Soon, the spear blades pierced through their soles. After their soles were injured, they immediately fell to the ground. Then, the Jade Maiden Peak elders carried them out of the formation, completely losing their right to continue the test. The sweat on Lu Suifeng's forehead flowed continuously into his eyes. It was very uncomfortable, but he did not dare to use his hands to wipe it away. It was not easy for him to maintain his balance. If he made a casual move now, it would be disrupted. Then, there would be a chain reaction and he would fall. However, it was very uncomfortable to ignore the sweat on his forehead. The sweat in his eyes caused his eyes to bleed continuously. His body started to sway slowly. Who? Just as Lu Suifeng could not hold on any longer, a cool breeze blew. It was very refreshing under the blazing sun. It blew away the sweat in his eyes. Lu Suifeng opened his eyes. The uncomfortable feeling had completely disappeared. He looked at Xiaochen beside him with a grateful expression. This cool breeze was naturally the palm wind that Xiaochen sent out. With the small perfection blue dragon cloud soaring art, he could walk on the river without getting wet. To him, this formation was nothing. Currently, there were only about 10 or 20 people who could do it as easily as Xiao Chen. As time passed, something appeared in the gazes of these people. Finally, someone could no longer hold it in. He shouted and quickly leaped towards Xiao Chen, attack. Xiao Chen's expression did not change. However, when he saw the clothes these people were wearing, he felt somewhat surprised. Originally, he thought that Zhang Lai would be the first to make a move. He did not expect the inner disciples of Biyun Peak to make a move first. Huang Dang. 4 Biyun Peak disciples drew their sabers and hacked at Xiao Chen. To be able to clear the first stage and jump freely on the spear, these 4 people were not simple. They were not ordinary superior grade martial grand masters, they were all peak martial grand masters. They were only a step away from advancing to martial saint. Yi Chen, what should we do? Lu Suifeng was somewhat flustered. Movement techniques were not his forte. It was already difficult for him to stand on the spear. If he wanted to fight, there was no hope for him. Xiao Chen smiled faintly, there is no need to panic. They are just a bunch of jumping clowns. If they were fighting on flat ground, Xiao Chen would have to spend some effort to deal with these 4 people. However, on the spear, as long as he wanted to, he could knock them down within 10 moves. However, he had to take care of Lu Suifeng. He could not leave the spear below him and could not move freely. Hu Qi. 4 saber lights hacked at Xiao Chen from 4 different angles. The dazzling saber light was incomparably piercing under the sunlight. Xiao Chen gently pushed off the spear tip and spun around. He drew the lunar shadow saber in his hand with a huang dang sound. An even more intense saber light moved as fast as lightning, chopping down 4 times. Bang! 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 The weapons containing strong essence clashed in the air. Saber lights flew everywhere, giving off 4 metallic sounds. Xiao Chen was fighting 1 against 4, but he was not at a disadvantage. Holding the lunar shadow saber, Xiao Chen landed firmly on the ground. On the other hand, the Biyun Peak disciples were knocked back by the force of the saber. These 4 people were quite impressive. They somersaulted in the air and after the force dissipated, they landed back on the spear. They pointed their sabers at Xiao Chen. Chapter 224. Senior brother Yu Qian, this person is not easy to deal with, a Biyun Peak disciple said to the leader. Yu Qian revealed a grave expression and said, there is no need to worry. The Peak Master already said that as long as we can disrupt this person's core disciple exam, he will give each of us 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones. With this 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones, even if we cannot pass the core disciple exam, it will not matter. It will be enough for us to cultivate. Furthermore, we still have another chance next year. There is no need to worry. If necessary, we can use a method where both sides suffer. When the other person heard this, he purposely glanced at Xiao Chen and said, that's true. 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones is enough for me to break through to martial saint. I will be able to pass the core disciple exam easily next year. The 2 of them chatted in front of Xiao Chen like there was no one else around. Xiao Chen had a calm expression as he grasped the lunar shadow saber tightly. His state of mind did not waver because of their conversation. Yi Chen, be careful. Lu Suifeng suddenly said. It turned out that the 2 people in front were purposely speaking to attract Xiao Chen's attention. The person behind Xiao Chen took advantage of this opportunity to make a move silently. This person smiled coldly in his heart. Once I get within 3 meters of you, you will have no chance. Go down. Mount Tai suppression. A huge mountain peak appeared behind this person. One could faintly see some faintly discernible birds and beasts circling the mountain peak. Not bad. Using the Mount Tai suppression as a peak martial grand master, he was able to materialize such an agile mysterious phenomenon. If it was purely based on mysterious phenomena, he was already as strong as Song Quebec. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth curled up into a faint smile. He was very calm as he evaluated this person's martial technique. His spiritual sense was spread out within a radius of 500 meters. All the actions of the 4 Biyun Peak disciples were under his surveillance. There were no blind spots at all. The mysterious phenomenon was not bad. Unfortunately, a strong martial technique required great strength as a foundation in order to bring out its might. Otherwise, it would just be for show. Ka-xie. Ka-xie. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art circulated quickly. The bones in Xiao Chen's body gave off cracking sounds. He placed the lunar shadow saber back into the universe ring and clenched his right fist tightly. Xiao Chen felt a boundless energy as he turned around and punched out. The image of a huge tiger appeared behind Xiao Chen. The tiger let out a long roar, instantly raising Xiao Chen's aura to its peak, as if he was the king of all beasts. Bang! With a punch, the mountain shattered. The mysterious phenomenon of the person who sneak attacked Xiao Chen instantly broke, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. His face turned completely pale. His body was like a kite with a broken string, swaying in the air as he fell. Just as he was about to be pierced by a spear, a white figure flew out and grabbed him, landing outside the formation. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art and ferocious tiger leaving the mountains allowed Xiao Chen to gather all the strength and essence in his physical body. His physical body's strength was 6,000 kilograms of force. The vast essence of an inferior-grade martial saint was equivalent to 5,000 kilograms of force. When the two were added together, this punch contained more than 10,000 kilograms of force. With such horrifying force, the so-called Mount Tai suppression was just a joke. A regular inferior-grade martial saint would not dare to receive this punch head-on. Junior brother Yao. I'll kill you. Splitting the mountains and splitting the earth. Clouds splitting cross-chop. Clouds flipping and breaking the sea. Seeing that their junior brother Yao's sneak attack failed and that his mysterious phenomenon even broke and he was severely injured, the remaining 3 lost their rationality and charged at Xiao Chen. They executed all sorts of moves, trying to break Xiao Chen's soul. The 3 peak martial grand masters all executed their best moves. Naturally, their might could not be underestimated. The originally scorching air was now so hot that it made breathing difficult. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. His left hand turned into a dragon and his right hand into a tiger. He crossed his arms and the dragon and tiger merged into his body. A flood dragon and a ferocious tiger circled around him. The dragon and tiger body sculpting art circulated at the same time. In an instant, a faint golden light appeared on the surface of Xiao Chen's body. He looked very calm and imposing. Boundless energy quickly accumulated. There was the might of a tiger and a dragon, but it was not released. Crouching tiger hidden dragon, not afraid of the mountains and rivers roar. Bang! The 3 people's best moves landed on Xiao Chen's body at the same time, giving off loud sounds. However, they were blocked by a formless barrier and could not advance any further. Explode! Xiao Chen shouted and the energy he accumulated erupted like a volcano. The dragon roared and the tiger roared. The air rippled like water, creating countless ripples. In the face of this unceasing torrent of energy, the remaining 3 people from Biyun Peak were unable to put up any resistance and were sent flying. During this period of time, Xiao Chen's dragon and tiger body sculpting art had already reached small perfection, the 4th layer. Thus, he could unleash a portion of this crouching tiger hidden dragon stance. When it reached great perfection, he could unleash all his energy. When he executed the dragon hissing tiger roar fist, its might would be even more horrifying. Mu Heng, who had been resting with his eyes closed like a pine tree in winter, suddenly opened his eyes. A strange light flashed in the depths of his eyes. What a strong physical body! Dragon and tiger body. This cultivation technique for tempering the body should be of the same rank as my cultivation technique. However, his physical body is not as strong as mine. When my purple jade body tempering art circulates at full power, my physical body is comparable to 100-year-old frost iron. My palms can even cut through metal and break jade. However, these are probably not his trump cards. Mu Heng thought about many things in a short while. It seemed like there was another opponent for the first rank of this core disciple exam. When the Tianyue Peak disciples saw everything in front of them, they were all astonished. It was already very difficult for them to stand on the spear's edge. They did not expect Xiao Chen to be able to bring out such a strong combat prowess. Wu Bing, who was beside Zhang Lai, thought for a while and said, "Junior brother Zhang, should we call over some of our senior brothers? We can make the first move and gain the upper hand. With the strength that he has displayed so far, he will be the biggest obstacle to you obtaining the first rank." At this moment, 10 of the stronger Tianyue Peak inner disciples walked over. They were the same as the Biyun Peak disciples, they could move freely on the spear's edge. Their strength was at the peak of the crowd. The person leading them looked at Zhang Lai and said, "Junior brother Zhang, if you have any ideas, you can tell us directly. Before we came, the Peak Master already instructed us that if there were any sudden incidents during the exam, Junior brother Zhang can dispatch us." When Zhang Lai heard this, he felt joy in his heart. He did not expect the Peak Master to trust him so much. However, after muttering to himself for a while, Zhang Lai gave up on this idea. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior brothers are too polite. I will not let down the Peak Master's expectations. I will definitely obtain the first rank in this exam. However, that Yi Chen is not our main enemy. If he is only as strong as he is now, I can easily defeat him. Our biggest opponent is him." Zhang Lai changed the topic and pointed at the low-profile Beichen Peak's Mu Heng. When Mu Heng felt Zhang Lai's gaze, he looked over and smiled indifferently. He did not pay too much attention to him. The people at the side were somewhat surprised. He is just an inferior grade martial Grand Master. Is there a need to pay so much attention to him? Zhang Lai did not explain too much. He said, "The situation might change later. Wait for a while. If I guess wrong, we will make our move immediately." The sudden attack of the 4 Biyun Peak disciples caused the disciples of the other peaks to become more cautious. No one knew who would suddenly make a move behind their backs. A cultivator from Qianduan Peak carrying a huge saber on his back stood quietly on the spear tip. The huge saber on his back was close to 2 meters long, 20 centimeters wide, and 30 centimeters thick. It was a huge saber worthy of its name. Just its weight alone was 250 kilograms. Even though he was carrying such a heavy saber, he did not move at all while standing on the spear's edge. He was as light as a feather and did not feel any pressure at all. This caused everyone to be astonished. When someone at the side saw the Tianyue Peak disciples discussing something, he whispered to that person, "Senior brother Gao Yang, there seems to be some movement from Tianyue Peak. Should we do something?" Gao Yang's face was very broad, he had thick eyebrows and big eyes. He gave off a heroic feeling. He glanced at Zhang Lai and the others from Tianyue Peak and said indifferently, "Let's just wait and see. Fighting on the spear tip does not give our Qianduan Peak disciples any advantage." The same conversation took place in the other peaks as well. Basically, every peak had a disciple they were proud of. They might not be as strong as Zhang Lai and the others, but they were strong enough to suppress the crowd. Everyone was discussing countermeasures to protect themselves in case of any mishaps, to prevent anyone from making a move. Lu Suifeng watched as Xiao Chen easily defeated the 4 Biyun Peak disciples charging at him with surging momentum on the spear tip. He could not help but sigh in his heart. Both of them were superior grade martial Grand Masters, but their strengths were worlds apart. "Yi Chen, are you alright?" Lu Suifeng asked. Xiao Chen replied, "I'm fine, I just exhausted some essence." "Be careful, there is still one more person from Biyun Peak who has yet to make a move." After sending the 3 flying, Xiao Chen had been paying attention to the remaining Biyun Peak disciples with his spiritual sense. He felt that one of them had a very strong aura, even stronger than Yu Qian's. However, he hid it very well. Originally, Xiao Chen wanted to rush forward and drag this person out. However, after thinking about it, there was still Zhang Lai eyeing him covetously from the side. There was no need to expose too much of his strength, so he gave up on the idea. Time went by, second by second. In the blink of an eye, an hour had gone by. Half of the time required for the test had already passed. There were still 80-odd disciples from the various peaks remaining. If there were no accidents, these 80-odd people would not have any problems persisting for another hour. Zhang Lai frowned. He felt that the test would not be so simple. However, an hour had passed, and there was still no movement. This caused him to feel suspicious. Never mind, I don't care anymore. I will make the first move and gain the advantage. A murderous intent flashed in Zhang Lai's eyes. His gaze was like a torch as he looked at Beichen Peak's Muhang. A boundless saber intent materialized in the depths of his eyes. Xiao. A few strands of saber chi appeared in the air. They were like sharp blades, easily tearing through the obstruction of the air. They created shockwaves as they shot towards Muhang. Muhang had expected Zhang Lai to suddenly make a move. However, he did not expect Zhang Lai's saber intent to be so strong, able to send out saber chi from thin air. Bang! 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 Muhang used his palm as a saber and hacked at the saber chi flying at him. There was a metallic clang as the saber chi flying at him was easily shattered by Muhang. Chapter 225. Attack. Deal with him first. Zhang Lai had expected that Muhang would not be defeated so easily by a few strands of saber chi. This was just the appetizer. Following Zhang Lai's words, 10 Tianyue Peak disciples who still had some strength left stepped on the sharp spear blades and pounced at Beichen Peak's Muhang. I will lure them away. You all do not have to make a move, Muhang said to the Beichen Peak disciples behind him who wanted to help. Muhang stomped heavily on the spear blade under his feet. Under the force of gravity, the spear blade actually distorted. Then, it shot out of the ground with a xiao sound. Muhang, who had already used the rebound force of the spear blade to jump into the air, caught the spear blade. He smiled faintly as he looked at the group of people rushing at him. Then, he threw the spear blade forward. Bang! The spear blade that was flying in the air suddenly shattered, turning into countless tiny pieces of metal. As it spun at high speed, it created a gust of wind, turning into a sharp killing weapon. Cloud Gathering Peak. Zhang Lai shouted and executed the first move of the Lingyun saber technique, Cloud Gathering Peak. Suddenly, clouds appeared above the formation. A strange peak rose up and blocked all the metal pieces flying at it. Dang! 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 Countless sounds rang out. When the clouds scattered, the crowd discovered that this strange peak was the saber in Zhang Lai's hand. The momentum of the saber was very ferocious, instantly knocking down all the metal pieces. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Muhang leaped more than 100 meters away. He casually waved his hand and pulled out another spear. Then, he chopped it in half with his palm and tossed it out with a so sound. The two halves of the spear spun rapidly in the air like a flaming wheel. It continuously attracted the surrounding air, forming a 3-meter-long tornado. Zhang Lai said, "Help me block this move. I will chase after him." So. 4 inner disciples jumped out from behind Zhang Lai, 2 to the left and 2 to the right. They drew their sabers at the same time and a 10-meter-long saber light soared up and struck the tornado. Zhang Lai did not care about the result of this attack. He did not stop and dodged the gap between the tornadoes, quickly flying towards Muhang. Seeing Zhang Lai chasing after him alone, Muhang revealed a smile. He pushed off the spear tip and there was an explosion. The spear blade immediately shattered into countless pieces and flew backwards. Bang! Every time Muhang took a step, one of the spear blades under his feet would shatter, turning into countless small pieces of metal. As they moved at high speed, they tore through the air and shot towards Zhang Lai like a torrential storm. With a glance, Zhang Lai saw countless lethal pieces of metal covering the sky. If he wanted to continue chasing, he would have to break through the storm formed by these countless pieces of metal. If I do that, I will have to exhaust a lot of essence. I feel like I fell into Mu Heng's trap, Zhang Lai thought to himself. However, he might not know that I cultivate a superior grade earth-ranked cultivation technique. The amount of essence I can store is definitely more than his. Thinking of this, Zhang Lai's face revealed a trace of mockery as he lightly shouted, "Sweeping mountain destroys clouds." This was the second move of the Lingyun saber technique. A mysterious phenomenon appeared, a mountain peak appeared out of nowhere. To everyone's astonished gazes, that mountain peak actually started to spin continuously. Rumble. As the mountain spun, the ground of the entire drill ground began to shake. Some unlucky inner disciples fell off the spear's edge on the spot. When Xiaoqin saw Zhang Lei execute 2 moves of the Lingyun saber technique, he was astonished. He did not expect Zhang Lei's talent to be so high. However, being able to produce a mysterious phenomenon does not mean that his comprehension of the Lingyun saber technique is deeper than mine, Xiaoqin thought to himself. The mysterious phenomenon was a kind of supplement to the martial technique. However, before the mysterious phenomenon was completed, if one used it rashly and it was broken, one's essence would be greatly injured. Back then, when Xiaoqin fought against Chu Chaoyun, he suffered greatly. Chu Chaoyun only used half a move to break his moon bright like fire mysterious phenomenon. Xiaoqian's essence was greatly injured and he no longer had the ability to continue fighting. Thus, in future battles, Xiaoqin was very cautious when he used the mysterious phenomenon. There were only 2 ways to break the mysterious phenomenon. The first was to find the flaw in the mysterious phenomenon, like what Chu Chaoyun did. The second was to break the mysterious phenomenon with brute force, using absolute strength to shatter the opponent's mysterious phenomenon, like what happened to Xiaoqin earlier. It was unknown what method Mu Heng would choose. The spinning mountain peak was a few hundred meters tall and had an unknown width. It stirred up the wind and clouds, causing the sky to darken and the ground to darken. It even covered the blazing sun. The raindrop-like pieces of metal struck the mountain peak with a ding-dang-dang sound. However, they did not have any effect as they all fell to the ground. Mu Heng turned around to take a look. There was no astonishment on his face. He stared at the image of the mountain peak. In his eyes, there was only this mountain peak left. The mountain peak got closer and closer, but Mu Heng still did not have any expression on his face. It was as though he did not know that when this mountain peak got close to him, it would easily crush him to death. I still can't find it. It is too difficult to find the flaw in the mysterious phenomenon, Mu Heng sighed and shook his head. Although the mysterious phenomenon that Zhang Lai executed was not perfect, it was not easy to find the flaw in it. Since I can't find it, then I'll shatter it. Mu Heng shouted and his body soared into the air. A purple glow appeared on his skin, like a jade-like glazed jade. Break for me. A palm strike without any fancy moves landed on the mountain peak. There was a loud bang, and the spinning mountain peak finally stopped. The instant the mountain peak clashed with the palm strike, it created a surging shockwave. Ripples appeared in the air and spread wildly in all directions, like the surging waves of the sea. The shockwave did not differentiate between friend and foe. If they were struck by it, at least half of them would fall off the spear tip. The pillars of the various peaks could not protect themselves at this moment, they all made a move. Bang! 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 There was an unending string of explosions on the drill grounds. When the crowd in the spectator stands saw this scene, they were all astonished. This exam was more intense and ferocious than any of the previous ones. Hu Qi. Xiaoqin swung his saber and chopped the surging shockwave in half, easily resolving the crisis. He continued to stare at the 2 people in the air. The image of the mountain peak in the air had already disappeared. Zhang Lai held his saber and blocked Mu Heng's seemingly ordinary strike. However, the force behind this seemingly ordinary palm strike was actually slightly stronger than Zhang Lai's. The mysterious phenomenon did not break. However, he managed to block it. This forced Zhang Lai to not dare to continue creating mysterious phenomena, Xiao Chen muttered. The two of them were not using their full strength in this exchange. After all, it was not the final showdown yet. They were just testing each other out. Of course, if there was an opportunity to knock the other down, they would be happy to do so. Zhang Lai held his saber and retreated a few steps. He jumped a few steps on the spear tip before he slowly stabilized himself. He landed not far from the Qianduan Peak disciple. Seeing Mu Heng land steadily, Zhang Lai was mildly astonished. He was actually at a disadvantage when he tested the waters earlier. Although he only used 30% of his strength, it was hard to guarantee that Mu Heng would not hold back. Mu Heng's attacks were not fancy at all, he did not even use any martial techniques. After a few moves, they were all straightforward attacks, relying purely on the strength of his physical body. Do you want to continue fighting? I am willing to accompany you at any time, Mu Heng looked at Zhang Lai and spoke for the first time. Continuing to fight head-on was definitely not a wise decision. This was not the final stage of the arena battle. If both sides were injured, it would only benefit the others. Zhang Heng also considered the crux of the matter. Pu Ci. Before Zhang Lai could speak, the Qianduan Peak disciple, Gao Yang, who was carrying a huge saber on his back, drew the huge saber from his back with his right hand. He left an afterimage in the air as he attacked Zhang Lai. There was a loud explosion in the air. This person's speed was actually close to the speed of sound. He crossed a distance of 100 meters in a breath of time. The huge and heavy saber directly chopped at Zhang Lai. Gao Yang had not expected this at all. Earlier, he had not revealed any killing chi. By the time Zhang Lai felt the killing intent and heard the sonic boom, the huge saber was only half a centimeter away from the back of his head. Zhang Lai, who had comprehended saber intent, was much more sensitive than regular cultivators. At this critical moment, he pushed off the tip of the spear with his feet. The spear sank into the ground with a hua-hua sound. Zhang Lai's body also fell. His flying long hair was chopped in the middle, floating in the air. He had narrowly avoided this saber strike. Gao Yang immediately withdrew his saber and retreated, returning to the group of Qianduan Peak disciples. His expression was calm, there were no fluctuations. How dare you sneak attack me? Zhang Lai turned around and shouted angrily at Gao Yang. Junior brother Zhang, are you alright? Wu Bing asked anxiously as he led the other 10 Tianyue Peak disciples over. Zhang Lai landed on another spear and tied up his hair again. He revealed a murderous intent as he looked at Gao Yang and said indifferently, I'm fine. However, I'm afraid some people will be in trouble. Gao Yang did not show any fear or panic. He revealed a crafty smile on his heroic face as he pointed at Xiao Chen and Mu Heng. He said, your opponent is not me, it is him and him. If you do not want to reveal all your trump cards before the arena battle, you can fight me. Although Gao Yang seemed to have a heroic background, he had a sharp mind. He could see through the stakes before him very clearly. Zhang Lai snorted coldly, trump cards? Are you even worthy of revealing my trump cards? Xiao. A few strands of saber chi appeared silently in the air. They tore through the air and created shockwaves as they flew towards Gao Yang's face. Dang! Dang! The huge saber spun very quickly, blocking in front of Gao Yang like a door. It blocked all the incoming saber chi. However, he was somewhat familiar with the strength of these saber chi. When the saber chi struck the body of the saber, it trembled continuously. Gao Yang felt his arm go numb and the saber nearly fell off. He quickly held the saber with both hands. When Zhang Lai saw the situation, he laughed coldly, with just this bit of strength, you dare to reveal my trump cards? You overestimate yourself. Chapter 226. In the distance, Lu Suifeng saw the sudden situation. He said suspiciously, why are the two of them fighting? I know that Gao Yang. This is the third time he is participating in the core disciple exam. He is very strong, but he should not be a match for Zhang Lai. Xiaoqin smiled and said, this person is very scheming. Earlier, he seemed to be acting weak on purpose. There is no reason for him to block those strands of saber qi so forcefully. What is the logic behind this? Is he not afraid that Zhang Lai will really kill him? Lu Suifeng said suspiciously. Xiaoqin withdrew the smile on his face and said seriously, this is where his brilliance lies. He should have some trump card that can kill him in one move. Maybe he had already planned this from the moment Zhang Lai landed in front of him. Who? Just as Xiaoqin spoke, the originally clear sky suddenly turned gloomy. A strong wind blew, kicking up the yellow sand on the ground and causing dust to fly everywhere. Zhang Lai, who was originally preparing to attack Gao Yang, turned serious. An essence barrier appeared in front of him, blocking the sand outside. He said suspiciously, what's going on? Why is there such a strong wind? Is the weather changing? Gao Yang looked at the sudden strong wind. Zhang Lai had stopped attacking because of it. He could not help but feel disappointed in his heart, what a pity. When the strong wind dissipated, a black flag appeared before everyone's eyes. It flew over from the horizon and soon arrived at the drill ground. The banner had a black background and white words. It was lined with yellow gold. There were two large words written on it, Heavenly Saber. There were simple and unadorned patterns and a spiraling golden dragon carved on the black pole. The speed of the banner was very slow. However, the force it carried was very shocking. Everywhere it passed, the air was like a curtain of water, gently rippling. An inner disciple did not understand what was going on. In the end, the flag touched him and he was immediately knocked back. He vomited a large mouthful of blood. A Jade Maiden Peak Elder immediately caught him, he had completely lost the right to participate in the exam. Scatter! Everyone was startled and quickly scattered. When they saw the black flag, they quickly made way for it. Soon, the flag flew to a spot not far from Xiaoqin. At this moment, the chief examiner on the ground suddenly said, only by obtaining the black flag can you be considered to have passed the test. Whoever obtains the flag can immediately end the test. Right after Xiaoqin spoke, the banner that everyone had been avoiding earlier immediately became a hot commodity. Everyone made a move, using all sorts of methods to snatch it. Lu Suifeng, who was behind Xiaoqin, also wanted to make a move. This was because the flag was the closest to Xiaoqin and Lu Suifeng. If they made a move, they would have a high chance of obtaining the flag. Don't make a move yet, Xiaoqin hurriedly stopped him. Lu Suifeng asked confusedly, why? After you get it, jump down immediately, and you can end the assessment. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Xiaoqin pointed and said, take a look. Have any of the truly powerful people from the various sects moved? When Lu Suifeng heard this, it was indeed as Xiaoqin had said. Mu Heng, Zhang Lai, Gao Yang, and the others did not move. It was as though this matter had nothing to do with them. I got it, a Gangyu Peak disciple said excitedly as he grabbed the flagpole. Boom! Just as he was about to jump down from the formation, all sorts of saber techniques and fist winds flew at him. All sorts of attacks came like a landslide, airtight. Aside from the Gangyu Peak disciples who did not make a move, the disciples of the other peaks all executed their best moves. With so many attacks, even an inferior grade martial saint would not be able to block it. How could a martial grand master block it? Before that disciple could land on the ground, he was already severely injured. His entire body was covered in wounds, and he was dripping with blood. The black banner flew out of his hand and returned to the air. Lu Suifeng watched from the side with fear in his heart. Fortunately, Xiaoqin made a move to stop him. Otherwise, the one lying on the ground would be him. How pitiful. This person will need to rest for at least 3 months before he can recover. This is too cruel. He did not hold back when he attacked. What exactly is going on with this core disciple exam? When the inner disciples in the spectator stands saw such a miserable scene, their hearts were filled with astonishment. In the past core disciple exams, they were also very intense. However, this time's exam was simply miserable and incomparably cruel. The exam could only end after one obtained the flag. With so many people present, there would definitely be more than one flag. Thus, there was no need to rush. Whoever obtained the first flag would definitely be attacked by the crowd. This was the principle of the shot hitting the bird that sticks out. In the earlier situation, even if it was Xiaoqin himself, he would not be able to escape unscathed. Xiaoqin extended out his spiritual sense and followed the direction the flag came from. He extended it continuously until he found the owner of the flag on a tall tower about 1,000 meters away from the drill grounds. A black-clothed man faced the blazing sun at the top of the tall tower. There were 5 flags on his back, fluttering in the wind. The sunlight blurred this person's appearance. His qi and blood were flourishing, rushing to the sky. Together with the flags beside him, his aura was overwhelming. He had the might of 1,000 horses and 1,000 soldiers, as though he could trample through the sky. The distance of close to 2,000 meters was already the limit of Xiaoqian's spiritual sense. Thus, Xiaoqian could not see the full appearance of this person, he could only see a rough silhouette. This person is at least a peak martial king. The heavenly saber pavilion is indeed filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There are peak experts everywhere, Xiaoqian sighed in his heart. Xiaoqian's spiritual sense detected 5 black flags around that person. The flags were spinning continuously, and there was a rotating air current in front of each flag. So, in the next moment, the 5 flags pierced through the obstruction of space and headed for the formation in the drill grounds. At first, they were as fast as lightning. However, when they got closer, they slowed down. When they slowed down, that was only relative to a high-ranked cultivator. In the eyes of ordinary people and low-ranked cultivators, they were several times faster than a horse carriage. Xiao. This time, the stronger inner disciples on the spear tips did not hold back. Essence surged around them and they all shot out, leaving behind afterimages in the air. When Lu Suifeng saw that Xiaoqian did not move, he said, "Yi Chen, are you still not going to make a move? There should be a limit to the number of flags. After shooting out one batch, there will be one less batch." Xiaoqian said indifferently, "Go and snatch them. It is not time for me yet." So. Another 10 flags shot out from the air. A strong wind blew on the formation and dust flew everywhere. This time, the crowd was in an uproar. Even those who wanted to hold back made a move at the same time. Yellow sand filled the air above the formation, and a strong wind blew. Figures flashed in the air, chasing after the flags in the air. The battle was incomparably intense. Occasionally, there would be people who were caught in the dark and lost the right to take the test. However, even in such a situation, there were still a few people who did not make a move. They stood quietly on the spear tips, not anxious at all. It was as though they had already forgotten the requirements of the test. Aside from Xiaoqian, Zhang Lai, Mu Heng, and Gao Yang, there was one person from each of the other 3 peaks who had not made a move. These 7 people represented one peak. In reality, they were the strongest 7 people in this test. I finally got it. A Tianyue peak disciple hugged a black flag and landed on the ground. He did not care about the bloody wounds on his body. He revealed a joyful smile on his face. Immediately, a Jade Maiden Peak elder came over and checked his wounds. The chief examiner nodded and noted down his number. Finally, someone succeeded in the second stage of the test. So. The intense battle continued. There was an endless stream of people jumping off the formation, successfully passing the test. However, there were even more people who were covered in wounds. They fell down empty-handed, failing the test. Lu Suifeng grabbed a black flag and immediately revealed an excited smile. He executed his movement technique with all his might, doing his best to avoid the attacks around him. He was just one step away from dodging the attacks of these people. A few figures chased after him. At this moment, Lu Suifeng had already used up all his strength. There was no way for him to move around in the air. The situation was dire. Purple thunder, true fire, shoot! A boundless flame started burning in Xiao Chen's right eye. The flames were like arrows, shooting towards the few people in the air. The speed of the flames was very fast. These people did not have the time to dodge in the air and were struck. They cried out miserably and fell to the ground. Lu Suifeng took advantage of this opportunity to land quickly. Something is strange. These flames are not ordinary. However, now that it is exposed, it will be easier to deal with. The other 7 people who remained on the formation muttered to themselves. When Xiao Chen's spiritual sense felt Lu Suifeng land safely, he relaxed completely. Although he had exposed one of his trump cards, it was worth it. When the strong wind scattered, the 15 black flags were finally snatched away. The people of Tianyue Peak were indeed strong. Out of the 15 flags, they managed to snatch half of them. When the remaining people saw the 7 people who did not make a move, they knew that the atmosphere was not right. They all tacitly jumped down and gave up on the core disciple exam. The place was extremely quiet. No one would have imagined that just a minute ago, this place was in chaos. Only the yellow sand below the formation was dyed red with blood, silently telling the story of the tragic battle earlier. The gazes of the inner disciples in the spectator stands, the inner disciples who did not pass the core disciple exam, the various peak masters and main hall elders were all focused on these 7 people. The first place of this core disciple exam will definitely be given to one of these 7 people. This exam is really extraordinarily intense. This is only the second stage, and more than 200 people have been eliminated. There are actually only 20-odd disciples left. If there were 50 spots like before, these people would have all passed. There will definitely not be 50 spots. With one look, it is clear that this exam is not simple. I think there will only be 10 spots at most. I wonder how many flags will fly over in this round. If there are not 7 flags, how many of these 7 strongest people will be eliminated? The ordinary inner disciples in the spectator stands all had complicated expressions as they looked at the 7 people on the platform. Due to various reasons, they had no chance of becoming a core disciple. However, when they saw this inner disciple exam, they felt lucky in their hearts. The blood below the spear formation was not for nothing. It was left behind by the inner disciples who participated in this exam. There were a few people who nearly died. Aside from those who gave up on their own accord, almost no one came out unscathed. Chapter 227. Although the identity of a core disciple was very tempting, such an intense battle caused fear in everyone. Hu Qi. Suddenly, another strong gust of wind blew. 5 black banners flew towards the spear formation from afar, kicking up a cloud of yellow sand. When they felt the number of flags flying towards them, the 7 of them could not help but feel nervous. There were only 5 flags. That meant that 2 of them would have to leave. Gao Yang's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. He was already 19 years old. If he did not succeed this time, he would lose all hope of becoming a core disciple. He could not afford to lose. It was not that he did not want to fight for the first 15 flags. However, he knew that if he made a move early, he would definitely suffer a fierce retaliation. Even if he obtained the flag, he would expose his trump card. It would be very disadvantageous for him in the arena battles. So, the remaining female disciple of Jade Maiden Peak, Wang Mei, made the first move. Her petite body left a white shadow in the air. She instantly grabbed a flag and dropped it. Senior Sister Wang, sorry for the offense. The remaining inner disciple of Gangyu Peak, Zhao Heng, said to Wang Mei. Then, he immediately flew forward and grabbed the other side of the flag. The two of them did not waste any words. They each grabbed one end of the flag and started fighting in the air. Xiaochen did not look at the two of them, nor did he look at the flags in the air. His figure flashed and he rushed towards the last Biyun Peak disciple, Lu Jun, rising peak and surging clouds. Xiaochen drew the lunar shadow saber with a huang-dang sound. The snow-white blade contained the state of the Lingyun saber technique. It was like a lone peak piercing through the clouds, pointing angrily at the sky. Although this saber did not give off any mysterious phenomenon, its might was not much weaker than the one Zhang Lai executed. In fact, in terms of pure strength, it was even stronger. There was only a slight difference in aura. Mountain-splitting stone. Out of Xiaochen's expectations, Lu Jun did not choose to dodge Xiaochen's powerful saber strike. Instead, he chose to clash head-on. Bang! When the sabers clashed, two resplendent saber lights exploded in the air. Even the air trembled in the direction where the weapons clashed. A huge force passed through the saber and was transmitted to the two of them. The two of them each took a step back and switched to another spear tip to stabilize themselves. They were evenly matched. Actually, Xiaochen was at a slight disadvantage in this saber strike. The grade of rising peaks and surging rocks was higher than that of splitting mountains and splitting rocks. However, it was only a draw. A proud smile appeared on Lu Jun's face. You didn't expect this, did you? I cultivate the pure yang cultivation technique, a peak earth-ranked cultivation technique. In terms of the thickness and quality of my essence, no one in the same cultivation realm can surpass me. I will defeat you fair and square. Die, three flowing cloud shadows. Lu Jun's body trembled and three figures appeared in front of Xiaochen. Each of the three figures sent out a saber strike. The saber lights linked together and surged towards Xiaochen like a gushing river. Xiaochen smiled faintly. You managed to comprehend something of your own in the three flowing cloud shadows. Furthermore, you are able to link them perfectly. You do have the capital to be proud. Rolling peaks destroying clouds. The image of a mountain flashed on Xiaochen's body and entered his body. Instantly, Xiaochen's aura changed. He was like a mountain rising from the ground, rushing towards the sky. Xiaochen spun around and the lunar shadow saber in his hand moved from top to bottom in the air. It created an intense shockwave and sucked in the three figures that Lu Jun created. Pu Ci. When Xiaochen's body stopped spinning, a horrifying wound appeared on Lu Jun's chest. Blood spurted out continuously. Lu Jun looked at the wound on his chest in disbelief. He pointed at Xiaochen and said in pain, "You, bang." Xiaochen lashed out with a whip kick, creating an intense wind as he mercilessly kicked him out. Unfortunately, sometimes, the amount of essence does not mean everything. Zhang Lai, who was not far away, was like a wooden man. When he saw all this, it was like thunder exploded in his mind. The Lingyun saber technique can actually be used like this. My Lingyun saber technique uses the mysterious phenomenon to complement my martial technique. However, his mysterious phenomenon is reserved and not released, focusing on the inner strength of his body. One is internal and one is external. In the end, they are different paths that lead to the same goal. There is no difference in who is stronger or weaker. The key is still one's comprehension. Zhang Lai thought about many things. However, I have comprehended saber intent. The moves that I executed earlier did not contain saber intent. When I infuse saber intent into my body, its might will definitely be stronger than his. After dealing with the final Biyun Peak inner disciple, Xiaochen waved his hand, wanting to pull over the black flag that passed by him. Qi! Qi! However, before Xiaochen could grab the black flag, a few strands of strong saber qi appeared out of nowhere and chopped the black flag into 5 pieces, completely destroying it. Xiaochen's face sank. He looked at Zhang Lai, who was 200 meters away. He did not expect his opponent to be so decisive. He actually destroyed one of the 5 flags. Zhang Lai felt Xiao Chen's gaze and smiled confidently. I will deal with you in this stage. Let's see whose Lingyun saber technique is stronger. Zhang Lai actually destroyed one of the flags. What is he trying to do? This fellow is too confident. There are 7 people and 5 flags. It is not enough in the first place, and he actually destroyed one. Many of the inner disciples in the spectator stands could not understand Zhang Lai's actions. This was not the finals yet. There was no need to force himself into a dead end. Bang! Just as everyone's attention was focused on Xiao Chen and Zhang Lai, Gao Yang, who had been silent all this while, suddenly made his move. A piercing light suddenly appeared on his 2-meter-long saber. Berserk Dragon burst. With a roar, the soles of his feet began to explode continuously. With each explosion, his speed would increase by a fraction. After 5 explosions, his speed had already reached an unimaginable level. Furthermore, the target that he wanted to attack was somewhat surprising. It was actually Wang Mei and Zhao Heng, who were fighting intensely. The two of them were at the crucial moment of their fight and could not get away. I want this flag. Gao Yang laughed loudly and swept his huge saber. A vast energy knocked Wang Mei and Zhao Heng back without any mercy. The two of them vomited a mouthful of blood in the air and fell to the ground. They looked at Gao Yang with extreme dissatisfaction and cursed, Gao Yang, you are too shameless. So. Gao Yang grabbed the black flag and ignored the curses of the two. He revealed an excited expression, everyone, I will make a move first. You all take your time and have fun. Gao Yang leaped a few times on the spear tip. The effect of the Berserk Dragon burst had not worn off yet. In the instant a few explosions occurred, he had already moved several hundred meters. He was just one step away from landing. Just at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. That person revealed a faint smile as he blocked his path and looked at him silently. Mu Heng, what are you trying to do? There are still 3 more flags, 1 for each of you. Why are you blocking me? Gao Yang's expression changed as he spoke in a sullen voice. Mu Heng did not waste any words and directly said, put down the flag and you can scram. Dream on. Gao Yang roared ferociously and there was another explosion under his feet. His speed was so fast that no afterimages could be seen. He was already very close to the speed of sound. Mu Heng's expression did not change. His entire body glowed with a purple light. His skin looked like it was made of jadeite, as though it was transparent. Suddenly, Gao Yang appeared behind Mu Heng. His huge saber carried a tremendous force as he hacked at the unresponsive Mu Heng. When everyone saw this scene, their hearts leaped into their throats. The martial techniques of Qianduan Peak were famous for their berserk nature. In terms of strength, they were undoubtedly the strongest among the 7 peak techniques. If this saber strike landed, even if one was not chopped in half, they would be severely injured and unable to get out of bed for half a year. To any cultivator, wasting half a year was something that they could not bear. Dang! There was a sound of metal clashing. The purple light on Mu Heng's back trembled. His body received this saber strike without any damage at all. Gao Yang was stunned. Gao Yang was stunned. Mu Heng turned around at lightning speed and raised his right hand, catching the huge saber that Gao Yang wanted to retreat with. No matter how strong Gao Yang was, he was unable to break through Mu Heng's right hand. The maximum speed of the Berserk Dragon burst is indeed shocking. Unfortunately, you are unable to break through my defense. Everything is for naught, Mu Heng said indifferently as he looked at Gao Yang, who was dripping with sweat. I fell for his trap. If I had attacked him continuously from the start, with my speed, he would not be able to catch up to me. I might even be able to break through his defense before the Berserk Dragon burst ends. Sometimes, a moment of hesitation would result in a completely different outcome. How hateful! Gao Yang said angrily. He released his hand and abandoned his huge saber. While he still had essence, he could support a few more Berserk Dragon bursts and quickly retreated. Ka. Mu Heng broke Gao Yang's 2-meter-long and 3-centimeter-thick saber gently. The huge saber was like a fragile blade, it shattered into countless pieces of metal and fell to the ground with a ding-dang-dang sound. Seeing Gao Yang's figure getting further away, Mu Heng smiled faintly. His body disappeared from the air and appeared in front of Gao Yang in the next instant. He said indifferently, "Game over." Mu Heng's right palm glowing with a purple light struck Gao Yang's chest in a ghostly manner. This palm strike did not look fancy, but it contained a horrifying physical strength. It was no weaker than Xiao Chen's full-powered strike. Ka. The sound of bones breaking came from Gao Yang's chest. He vomited a large mouthful of blood. Gao Yang's face scrunched up in pain. He pointed at Mu Heng angrily and said, "You lied to me." Bang! Mu Heng kicked Gao Yang's shoulder and used this force to return to the formation. He held the banner in his hand and looked at Gao Yang on the ground. He smiled faintly and said, "That's right, I was indeed playing with you." Gao Yang had been smart for a long time, he had calculated everything. Not only did he lose his chance, but he was also played by someone. He was so angry that he trembled. He could not catch his breath and fainted. What Mu Heng used earlier should be the Beichen Peak's secret technique, 7-star transposition. It can achieve the effect of teleportation for a short distance. This Gao Yang is in a bad mood. He sneak attacked others a few times. In the end, he was played like a fool. He deserves it. You can't say that. The competition this time is too cruel. There is nothing wrong with using some tricks. He is just not as skilled as others. Chapter 228. However, what's going on with Mu Heng? Why did he jump up after obtaining the banner? The people in the spectator stands did not have much sympathy for Gao Yang. After all, his actions were not good. Schwa. Schwa. Just as everyone was discussing the earlier matter, Mu Heng did something shocking. He broke the banner in his hand as well. Xiao. Zhang Lai and Xiao Chen made a move at the same time. Each of them broke a banner. Of the remaining 5, only one banner remained, floating in the air between the 3 of them. What are they trying to do? If the 3 of them obtained the banner, they could have ended the test. Why do I have a feeling that they are trying to bring forward the decisive battle? I really do not understand this test. It is only the second stage, and it is already so intense. What is going on? Now, the 3 of them have been forced into a corner. Only one of them can obtain the banner. The remaining 2 will be eliminated. Not only did the people on the ground not understand the situation, but the other inner disciples in the spectator stands and the peak masters of the various peaks also did not understand why the decisive battle was brought forward. On the highest seat of the elders in the drill grounds, the second elder beside the first elder, Jiang Qi, smiled gently and said, "These 3 people seem to understand our intentions. I wonder who the first elder thinks more highly of." With the strength of these 3, they could easily get into the top 10 in any of the past core disciple exams. They are all very strong. It does not matter who wins or loses. Jiang Qi's deep gaze was like a pool of clear water, no one could guess what he was thinking. The third elder beside him said, "Big brother Jiang Qi, if the peak masters knew about what we did, would they have any objections?" The first elder said expressionlessly, "No one is allowed to object to the things that I have decided." When the other elders heard this, their hearts tightened. They all shut their mouths and stopped discussing this issue. On the formation made up of countless spear blades, Xiao Chen, Mu Heng, and Zhang Lai each stood in a corner. Their auras gathered continuously. The qi and blood of the 3 of them were very vigorous. As their auras gathered, the air in the drill grounds became somewhat viscous, making it difficult to breathe. Between the 3 of them, the force attached to the slowly fluttering flag finally disappeared and it slowly descended to the ground. Their gazes never left the flag, and a strange light flashed in each of their eyes. Whoosh! In the next moment, 3 strong gusts of wind appeared in the air, blowing away the sticky air and swirling up countless yellow sand. The 3 of them moved at the same time, each using their own movement techniques to grab the falling banners. 7-star transposition. Traceless water treading. Blue dragon tail whip. Mu Heng's figure strangely disappeared from the air. Zhang Lai gently pushed off the ground and there were ripples on the ground, leaving behind afterimages. A blue dragon flowed out of Xiao Chen's body. With a light shout, he streaked across the sky. The 3 of them executed their best moves and flew towards the descending black banner. In the end, Xiao Chen's blue dragon cloud soaring art was better. A green light descended and grabbed the banner. A heaven-ranked movement technique was indeed a heaven-ranked movement technique. Even though he had only practiced it to small perfection, there were not many cultivators of the same cultivation realm who could surpass Xiao Chen in terms of movement techniques. Almost at the same time, when Xiao Chen grabbed the end of the banner, Zhang Lai and Mu Heng had already descended. They stretched their hands out to grab the banner. Xiao Chen pulled gently, and the banner streaked through the air and landed behind Xiao Chen. The 2 of them grabbed nothing but air. 100 transformations peak. 1,000 mountains 10,000 shadows palm. Zhang Lai and Mu Heng did not hesitate and made their moves at the same time. Each of them executed the 3rd move of the Lingyun saber technique, instantly turning into hundreds of layers of mysterious mountains, covering the sky and turning it dark. On the other side, Mu Heng circulated the purple jade body tempering art. Hundreds of purple shadows flashed around him, making it hard to distinguish which was real and which was fake. There was no way to make a move. Xiao Chen revealed a grave expression. These 2 were not ordinary superior-grade martial grand masters. One had comprehended saber intent, and his talent was exceptional. The other had tempered his physical body and turned it into a saber. His pure offensive power was not inferior to Xiao Chen's. No matter where he was, he would be a demonic genius. 100 transformations peak. I think I know it as well. Xiao Chen collected his thoughts and smiled faintly. Hundreds of illusions of mountains appeared behind him as well. However, these illusions disappeared in a flash and instantly entered his body. The snow-white lunar shadow saber suddenly lit up with a resplendent glow. This was not a saber light. It was the pure mysterious phenomenon of the Lingyun saber technique infused into the saber. The essence in Xiao Chen's body also infused into the saber. The glow became even more dazzling. It was like a miniature sun. The dark sky immediately became incredibly bright. Break for me. Xiao Chen shouted and hacked ferociously at the endless mountain range. Rumble, rumble. A series of earth-shattering sounds resounded continuously. The mountain range trembled and the entire drill ground started to tremble. The air currents started to compress continuously. Some of the spear blades on the ground could not withstand the pressure and were pulled out of the ground, flying into the air. Bang! The mountain range disappeared and Zhang Lai appeared in the air with a pale complexion. He slowly descended. The sunlight from the sky shone down once again, illuminating this space with a fiery heat. Hu Qi. Xiao Chen's movements did not stop. After he knocked back Zhang Lai, he quickly turned around and transferred the lunar shadow saber to his left hand. He circulated the dragon and tiger body sculpting art and the bones in his body started to crackle continuously. The muscles on Xiao Chen's body visibly increased in size. A huge tiger image appeared behind Xiao Chen. The tiger roared continuously, causing Xiao Chen's aura to rise to another level. Ferocious tiger coming out of the mountains, 100 beasts charging. When the hundreds of figures around Mu Heng got close to Xiao Chen, they merged together. Their aura also rose to the peak. They did not give way to Xiao Chen's aura, which was like the king of all beasts. Explode for me. Mu Heng roared angrily. His purple jade-like right palm carried the power of the hundreds of figures as it clashed with Xiao Chen's fist without hesitation. Boom! When the fist and palm collided, it was like a thunderclap resounded in the silent drill grounds. It reverberated in everyone's ears, causing their eardrums to tremble. Some of the weaker cultivators even temporarily went deaf. A shockwave surged out in all directions like a surging wave. Those spear blades flying in the air were directly crushed into powder and scattered by the wind. Who? The two of them were knocked back, and in an instant, they retreated a few hundred meters. Xiao Chen's body spun once in the air, and gently landed on the edge of a spear. After that, he slowly grabbed the black banner that he had been protecting behind him. Mu Heng was not as calm. Every time he retreated, he would shatter a spear blade. He broke 100 spear blades before he stopped. One palm and one fist. The two of them relied on the strength of their physical bodies. They were basically evenly matched. Although all of this took a long time to describe, it was actually just one exchange of moves between Xiao Chen and the two of them. Everything took only a few breaths of time. The three of them each stood in a corner and started to recuperate their auras. They were not in a rush to make a move. The surging formation immediately calmed down. However, everyone knew that this was just the calm before the storm. Ha! Indeed, after a while, Zhang Lai and Mu Heng both shouted and charged at Xiao Chen. Now, the two of them knew that they were no longer a match for Xiao Chen by themselves. They could only work together to take him down. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth curled up into a gentle smile. Suddenly, he let out a long roar. A lofty feeling rose in his heart. Since he left the Xiao clan, he had not fought to his heart's content. All the opponents he met were either too strong or too weak. Coincidentally, he met two opponents who were evenly matched today. Then, he might as well fight to his heart's content. After blocking Zhang Lai's attack with his saber, Xiao Chen clenched his left fist and clashed with Mu Heng's palm wind. On the formation, the three of them were on the spear tips, moving up and down continuously. The sounds of saber wind, punches, claps, tiger roars, and all sorts of other sounds came out continuously. After a while, the three of them exchanged more than 100 moves on the formation. Everywhere they passed, the spear tips under their feet all shattered. A strong wind blew and yellow sand filled the air. Soon, Xiao Chen managed to last more than 500 moves under the barrage of attacks from the two. He did not show any signs of being at a disadvantage. Instead, he became more ferocious from a distance and his aura soared. The crowd in the spectator stands could only see the blurry figures of the three through the yellow sand and the sounds of weapons, fists, and kicks clashing. It was such an exciting battle, yet they had to watch it through a layer of yellow sand. They felt an unbearable itch in their hearts. It was a pity. This Xiao Chen is really strong. Under the attacks of the two of them, he did not show any signs of being at a disadvantage. Qing Yun Peak's Xiao Chen truly lives up to his reputation. Zhang Lai and Mu Heng are not bad either. A regular inferior grade martial saint would not be a match for the two of them. How can they be bad? There is no need to talk about Zhang Lai. He is already publicly acknowledged in Tianyue Peak. He is already one of the top 10 core disciples of Tianyue Peak. I heard from the people of Beichen Peak earlier that Mu Heng is the son of the Beichen Peak's Peak Master. He spends most of his time cultivating in the back mountains, turning himself into a saber and using his strength to prove his Tao. Every time his cultivation increases, his strength increases exponentially. I wonder how long Xiao Chen can last. I believe he will not be able to last more than 500 moves. Indeed, after all, he is fighting one against two. His essence expenditure is double that of the two of them. The longer it goes, the greater the difference will be. However, for him to be able to last for so long, his strength is indeed horrifying. While the people in the arena were fighting, the people outside the arena were not idle either. They all expressed their views and opinions. After this battle, even if Xiao Chen lost, the rumors about him would fall apart. As the saying goes, the laymen watch the excitement, while the insiders watch the ropes. The few peak masters in the spectator stands were completely shocked. They were incomparably astonished by Xiao Chen's strength. His aura is long and drawn out, and he is able to multitask. His saber techniques and fist techniques are perfectly coordinated. This fellow is truly horrifying, the Gongyu Peak's Peak Master sighed. The Jade Maiden Peak's Peak Master, Chu Shangyun, also had an expression of admiration on her pretty face. The strength of his physical body is comparable to Mu Heng's. His saber techniques can suppress Zhang Lai's. His essence seems to be inexhaustible. I wonder how strong he will become after he becomes a martial saint. The Biyun Peak's Peak Master, Song Ke, had not said anything since he made a fool of himself earlier. When he saw Xiao Chen's true strength, he thought to himself anxiously, his potential is too horrifying. If he is given time to grow, who knows what horrifying realm he will reach. At that time, the consequences would be dire. I have to find an opportunity to kill this person. Chapter 229. When the Beichen Peak's Peak Master, Mu Feng, saw Xiao Chen, he was astonished as well. He originally thought that Mu Heng would be able to obtain the first rank easily. Now, it looked like it would be difficult. However, this was good as well. If he could poke Mu Heng's spirit and make him restrain himself, it would only be beneficial for him in the future. Ling Tianzheng saw all this. After a while, he sighed and said, Ryue, you really accepted a good disciple this time. Tianyue Peak has dominated the first rank of the core disciples for 10 years. Now, it is time to hand it over. Lu Ryue revealed a cheerful smile on her flirtatious face. Seeing Xiao Chen's growth, she was probably the happiest person. Martial Uncle Leng, you are too polite. Tianyue Peak is filled with talents. This time, we still have the most number of people who passed. Haha, let's see. Zhang Lai has not used his saber intent on a large scale. Junior brother Mu's son should still have some trump cards that he has not used yet. The result of this battle has not been determined yet. Ling Tianjing smiled gently and changed the topic. Even if they lost the first rank in this exam, Ling Tianjing would not care too much about it. After all, the overall strength of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion was still there. There was an endless supply of new disciples. They would still be able to suppress the other peaks. Bang! Bang! As the crowd discussed, there were two more loud sounds coming from the drill grounds. Countless spear blades shook a few times and were pulled into the air. After that, they were burned into powder by the shockwave. The strong wind died down and the yellow sand scattered. The three of them moved back and their figures slowly appeared before the crowd. Mu Heng's complexion was pale and blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. The blazing purple light on his body also slowly dimmed. Zhang Lai's clothes were tattered and there were many saber wounds all over his body. Some of the wounds were very deep and blood flowed out continuously. He was in a sorry state. Xiao Chen held his saber in one hand and the banner in the other. Sweat flowed down his face continuously. There were also some saber wounds on his body. However, they were not fatal. With his strong physical body, he had mostly recovered. Xiao Chen's long robes fluttered in the wind. His long, black hair fluttered in the wind. The snow-white saber gave off a cold light and the banner in his hand fluttered. Xiao Chen's aura flourished as his qi and blood surged into the sky. He felt incredibly delighted and wanted to fight another 800 rounds. You are very strong. If you can withstand this move of mine, I will take the initiative to withdraw from this competition, Mu Heng said indifferently as he gently wiped off the blood at the corner of his lips. Zhang Lai remained silent for a while. He took out some medicine from his space ring and slowly applied it to his wounds. He said indifferently, me too. If you can receive my final move, I will forfeit this core disciple exam. Xiao. Xiao Chen waved the banner in his hand and stabbed it into the ground. He said, it doesn't matter. Whoever comes first wins. The banner in my hand belongs to him. Me first. Zhang Lai said softly. His aura started to slowly gather. He grasped the saber in his right hand tightly and infused the saber intent he comprehended into his aura. Suddenly, a boundless strong wind blew behind Zhang Lai. Everywhere the strong wind passed, some of the air currents were sliced apart, giving off a zzz sound. Zhang Lai's saber intent actually merged with the strong wind. With your talent, you should have already comprehended the 16th move of the Lingyun saber technique. However, my everlasting startling cloud is infused with my small perfection saber intent. Its might is incomparable. I hope you can block it. Just as Zhang Lai finished speaking, wisps of mist appeared above the formation out of nowhere, blocking everyone's line of sight, preventing them from seeing what was happening inside. Not only that, this fog could even obscure one's 5 senses and spiritual sense. Xiaochen thought to himself in shock. Zhang Lai's saber intent must be in the fog as well. Indeed, in the next moment, Xiaochen felt a killing intent coming from all directions within the clouds. When the clouds touched his skin, they immediately started to attack his protective essence, giving off a zzz sound. Xiaochen placed his right hand on the hilt of the lunar shadow saber. The qi whirlpool in his dantian spun rapidly, continuously increasing the strength of his essence. Within the clouds, the 5 senses were blocked. When he extended out his spiritual sense, all he felt was the boundless clouds. Xiaochen was like a blind man within the clouds, he could not see anything. This move put Xiaochen in a disadvantageous position. Xiaochen simply closed his eyes and stopped using his eyes to observe his surroundings. He was going to deal with the changes by remaining unchanged. Zhang Lai, who was hidden in the clouds, locked his aura on Xiaochen. When he felt Xiaochen's movements, he revealed a faint smile. No matter who it is, after their senses are blocked, they will not be able to receive this attack of mine. Everlasting startling cloud. The surrounding clouds slowly scattered and gathered towards the saber in Zhang Lai's hand. White spots of light leaped about on the black saber blade. Boom! When all the clouds disappeared, the saber in Zhang Lai's hand had already absorbed all the saber intent in the clouds. The light of the entire saber had reached an incredible level. The most important thing was that this saber had already appeared less than a meter in front of Xiaochen. The tip of the saber was pointed at Xiaochen. The saber gave off a strong wind, blowing Xiaochen's hair back violently. Everything happened in the time it took for a spark to fly. In the eyes of the onlookers, it was only a few breaths of time. Zhang Lai swung his saber and the clouds surrounded the formation. In the next moment, the clouds disappeared. Zhang Lai had already arrived before Xiaochen with a stunning saber strike. It was very strange. Among the people present, only a few discovered the secret. The instant the clouds appeared, Zhang Lai used the time when Xiaochen's senses were blocked to silently fly to a spot 10 meters in front of him. Before the saber blade touched Xiaochen, that resplendent saber light turned into a tiny saber qi and shot towards Xiaochen's forehead. So. At the crucial moment, Xiaochen finally opened his tightly shut eyes. That tiny saber qi was faster than the speed of sound. At such a close distance, by the time Xiaochen opened his eyes, it had already arrived in front of his eyes. Xiaochen pushed off the ground with his feet, and his entire body spun rapidly. His spinning body created a shockwave, and tiny cyclones appeared in the surrounding space. The thin saber qi chased after Xiaochen, quickly extending through the air. Everywhere it passed, cracks appeared in the air. The thin thread-like saber qi seemed like it would catch up to Xiaochen in the next moment. However, it could not catch up. The corner of Zhang Lai's lips curled up. He raised his right hand, which held the saber, and the thin thread started to become thinner. He looked at Xiaochen and smiled. It's useless. No matter how fast you run, you will not be able to escape from my everlasting startling cloud infused with small perfection saber intent. Xiaochen's entire body continued to spin. He did not waver because of Zhang Lai's words. The thin thread-like saber qi eventually became so thin that it could not be seen with the naked eye. Then, it completely disappeared into the air. Xiaochen had already learned the everlasting startling cloud. Naturally, he would not think that the everlasting startling cloud had already run out of energy. The next burst of energy was the true essence of the everlasting startling cloud. Xiao Chen's body continued to spin, rising higher and higher. In the blink of an eye, he was 100 meters away. The Lingyun saber technique itself was a superior grade Earth-ranked martial technique. This was especially so for the final 3 moves, they were close to the might of a heaven-ranked martial technique. Furthermore, it had infused all of Zhang Lai's saber intent. How strong would this everlasting startling cloud be? Even Xiao Chen himself did not know. If he wanted to block this move, aside from the 17th move of the Lingyun saber technique, twisting road around peak, Xiao Chen had no other way to do so. However, this twisting road around peak did not allow Xiao Chen to make a breakthrough. He only had a flash of inspiration and comprehended something. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he took the risk and executed it based on his intuition. If he failed, Xiao Chen would be severely injured by the everlasting startling cloud infused with saber intent, wasting half a year of his time. If he succeeded, he would comprehend the 17th move of the Lingyun saber technique, twisting road around peak. From then on, he would have another true killing move. With a 50-50 chance of victory, Xiao Chen did not hesitate to bet on it. With his current comprehension ability, he was still unable to comprehend the twisting road around peak. It was clear that once he comprehended the twisting road around peak, its might would be extremely horrifying. Now that this opportunity was right in front of him, if he did not use it, he might have to wait another 10 years before he could comprehend it again. Appear! Zhang Lai shouted, and the thin line that originally disappeared in the air became like a laser saber chi. It appeared out of nowhere and pierced through the entire formation, continuing to move forward. Who? Outside the drill grounds, a wall 2,000 meters away from Zhang Lai was pierced by the saber chi. The entire wall immediately cracked and collapsed in the next moment. Fortunately, the attack area of the thin line was only a small area. When it disappeared, Xiao Chen's body started to grow taller. At this moment, he was already several hundred meters above the ground. Die! Everlasting startling cloud, explode! Zhang Lai roared ferociously, and the saber chi that was as resplendent as a laser suddenly scattered. It turned into countless beams of light and exploded in all directions. Boom! 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 The beams of light were like fireworks exploding. It was like the most beautiful scene in the world. However, the more beautiful something was, the more deadly it was. This beam of light was no exception. Good. Zhang Lai's saber intent is indeed horrifying. Originally, the everlasting startling cloud could only be executed on a flat surface. Now, it has no blind spots. Furthermore, its might is very strong, it is already very close to a heaven-ranked martial technique. I guarantee it with my status as the Biyan Peak's Peak Master. Even if Yichen does not die, he will be severely injured. He will not be able to dodge it. Song Ke, whose eyes originally had no color in them, immediately shouted excitedly when he saw this scene. It was as though he was afraid that others did not know. His voice was shockingly loud. Lu Riyue also felt conflicted. She did not expect the everlasting startling cloud to be so horrifying. With her strength, she would have to put in a lot of effort to block this move. Could Xiao Chen dodge it? Every strand of the boundless light contained a horrifying force. It could easily pierce through the defense of a martial grand master. Furthermore, it did not have any blind spots, there was no way to dodge it. Since he could not dodge it, he might as well break it. Xiao Chen's body stopped spinning and he shouted, "Road twisting peak." Chapter 230. So. Xiao Chen, who was high in the sky, pointed his saber at Zhang Lai, who was on the ground. He locked onto Zhang Lai with his spiritual sense and his body moved in a slanted line, moving towards the ground like a meteor. Everywhere Xiao Chen passed, a mountain slowly appeared from the top to the bottom of the mountain along with Xiao Chen's figure. There were strange flowers and plants on the mountain peak. The forest was shady and there were birds and beasts flying around. When Xiao Chen looked carefully, he found that there were actually countless buildings at the waist of the mountain. He could vaguely see countless figures practicing martial techniques in the middle of the mountain. Every time the mountain peak grew, it was clear that Xiao Chen's speed had increased by one level. In the spectator stands, all the elders and peak masters were astonished. This is the mysterious phenomenon of the small perfection realm. There are no flaws at all. The lights flying towards Xiao Chen were all submerged in the mysterious phenomenon that Xiao Chen created, disappearing without a trace. As for the lights in other directions, they all exploded. They were like claps of thunder, resounding through the clouds and roaring continuously. Finally, they merged into one. The air seemed like it was sliced in half like a curtain of water. It only mended after a long time. Unfortunately, it was not in Xiao Chen's direction, so it was useless. Hu Qi. The mountain peak completely formed. Xiao Chen's speed instantly broke through the speed of sound. There was a sonic boom in Zhang Lai's ears. In a flash, he landed firmly 200 meters behind Zhang Lai. Zhang Lai stretched out his hand and gently touched his forehead. There was a small wound there. To him, it was negligible. I've lost. Zhang Lai knew that Xiao Chen had shown mercy. Otherwise, the saber would have pierced through his forehead. Although he was dissatisfied, he still jumped off the spear tip. Boom! Zhang Lai staggered and fell to the ground. That last saber strike had used up all of his mental energy. In the end, he still failed and could no longer hold on. Immediately, the Jade Maiden Peak elders came over and quickly carried Zhang Lai out to treat his injuries. Your turn. Xiao Chen said as he looked at Mu Heng, who was not far away. Mu Heng smiled faintly and jumped down from the spear tip. There's no need. Your final move is a small perfection mysterious phenomenon. I cannot block it. You have expended too much of your essence qi. I will not take advantage of you. In the future, I will defeat you fair and square. Twisting road around peak, so the 17th move of the Lingyun saber technique is like this. No one has used it for several hundred years already. That's right. Zhang Lai's 16th move, Everlasting Startling Clouds, was already terrifying enough. I didn't expect it to be nothing in front of the 17th move. Mu Heng is very magnanimous, directly giving up and not taking advantage of others. With such magnanimity, his future accomplishments will not be low. Senior brother Mu has raised a good son. The peak leaders on the platform expressed their opinions regarding the battle from before. Only one person remained silent, with a dark expression on his face. Needless to say, this person was the one who used the Biyun Peak's peak master to guarantee Xiao Chen's defeat, Song Quebec. Right after he spoke, Xiao Chen used the twisting road around peak to slap him in the face. The story was truly full of twists and turns. Junior brother Song, it looks like you cannot speak so casually in the future. Ha ha. The Qianduan Peak's peak master joked. Before Song Ke lost an arm, he was extremely arrogant and domineering. He did not have a good relationship with the peak masters of the other peaks. Now that they saw him suffer a few setbacks, they could not help but make fun of him. Song Ke snorted coldly, what ability does he have? Mu Heng just gave up. If Mu Heng did not give up, this brat would have lost the right to take the test. When Lu Ryue heard this, she immediately retorted, all the Biyun Peak disciples have been eliminated. Why are you still sitting here? Are you trying to make things difficult for yourself? Song Ke's face turned red. He smacked the wooden table violently and said, since when is it up to you to decide whether I stay or go? So. Just as the two of them were arguing, the first elder Jiang Qi, who was on the platform, shot out another black dart at the chief examiner. Did the situation change again? Everyone stopped their discussion and asked suspiciously. On the drill grounds, the chief examiner caught the black dart with a schwa sound. He opened the note on it, and after a while, he looked at the crowd and said, Mu Heng and Zhang Lai, the Elders' Assembly has decided to make an exception for the three of you to pass the second stage. We will stop the test for now. 3 days from now, we will start the arena battles. Dismissed. Furthermore, I believe everyone has already guessed that the test this time is different. There are only 10 spots for the core disciple test this time. However, the reward will be 5 times that of the previous ones. I hope everyone will work hard when they return. Mu Heng, who was originally preparing to leave, could not help but stop when he heard this. He shook his head and smiled. If I cannot obtain the first rank, the purpose of the test is not that important. On the formation, Xiaochen held the banner and jumped down gently. He looked at the elders' seats on the high platform. There was a pensive look in his eyes. What are they preparing for these 3 days? Late at night, the moonlight shone through the window into Xiaochen's courtyard. Xiaochen sat cross-legged on his bed and circulated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. He slowly recovered the essence, qi, and spirit that he exhausted during the day. The qi whirlpool in Xiaochen's dantian spun continuously. Drops of crystalline liquid slowly fell from the qi whirlpool. Xiaochen felt the speed of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation's circulation. Xiaochen felt the speed of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation's circulation, and Xiaochen thought to himself, it looks like I am about to break through to the 4th layer of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Something big will happen after this test. I have to make preparations in advance. If I have the opportunity to break through to the 4th layer of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation, I can go all out and prepare for a rainy day. At midnight, the spirit blood jade on Xiaochen's chest silently flashed with a white light. Under the illumination of the moonlight, Bai's body, which was as smooth as snow, appeared quietly. Then, it quickly leaped through the window and headed out of the courtyard. Xiaochen opened his eyes and looked in the direction Bai left. He smiled faintly and did not bother with it. These days, Bai would go out every night. At first, Xiaochen was somewhat worried. However, he discovered that it did not go far. After stealing a bottle of wine from Xiaoyang, it would go to the back of the mountain to cultivate. It would return punctually before daybreak. That was all. Xiaochen could relax. To the restless Bai, the place it disliked the most was the spirit blood jade. Xiaochen was happy to let it go out for a breather. Recollecting his thoughts, Xiaochen continued to circulate the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. He was making his final preparations for breaking through to the 4th layer of the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation. Bai, who was outside the courtyard, ran out happily. It turned into a white figure and made its way to Xiao Yang's room with great familiarity. It gently opened the window to Xiao Yang's room without making any sound. When it came out, it carried a bottle of wine and drank it happily. After it finished drinking the wine in the bottle, a blush appeared on Bai's face. Under the illumination of the moonlight, it looked very charming and beautiful. Its intelligent eyes were filled with charm. Bai quickly went to the back of the mountain and found a place with dense spiritual energy. Then, it sat down cross-legged like a human. The dense essence in its body slowly circulated the mysterious 9 heavenly revolution transformation. The mist was hazy and the surrounding spiritual energy was like a torrential storm. Under the moonlight, the raindrops of spiritual energy had an indescribable gentleness and beauty. The rainwater instantly entered Bai's body. Slowly, Bai's body became as transparent as glass. Below its body, there was a blurry white spot of light that was very eye-catching. It jumped around happily, swallowing the spiritual energy that entered its body. As the amount of spiritual energy it absorbed increased, the spot of light slowly grew larger. Amidst the haziness, that spot of light, it could no longer be called a spot of light. Instead, it was a small ball of light that gave off a gentle glow. The small ball of light changed continuously, forming all sorts of shapes. Finally, it struggled to form a small human figure. However, before it could maintain this state for a minute, the human figure scattered into countless spots of light and turned back into a ball of light. The mysterious 9 Heavenly Revolution transformation was a high-ranked immortal grade secret manual for demonic cultivators. According to the records in the Compendium of Cultivation, in terms of cultivation speed, it was much faster than the Purple Thunder divine incantation that Xiaoqin cultivated. If Xiaoqin was here and discovered what Bai was doing, he would be greatly astonished. This was because Bai was actually undergoing transformation. The spirit beasts of the Tianwu continent could only undergo transformation after they reached martial monarch. Furthermore, the process was not only extremely painful, it was also very shocking. The chances of failure were also very high. However, once the transformation succeeded, it would be a qualitative leap for a spirit beast. Not only would their outer appearance change, they would also become no different from humans. Furthermore, their spiritual intelligence would also improve. Their bodies would also be able to cultivate human martial techniques and cultivation techniques. For a spirit beast that could only rely on its instincts to fight, its strength would increase by at least twofold. The path of transformation had a very low success rate. Once it failed, it would turn to dust. Although most spirit beasts yearned for it, very few would choose this path. Furthermore, even though spirit beasts succeeded in transforming, they could not completely integrate into human society. Most of them would join the myriad fiend palace of the fiend race. That was a sect passed down by the ancient fiend race. As long as they were there, they would have a place to stay. The raindrops formed from spiritual energy slowly scattered. Bai stopped cultivating and raised his head to look at the night sky. A trace of melancholy flashed in his intelligent eyes. Under the gentle moonlight, Bai hugged his wine bottle and walked unsteadily towards Xiaoqian's courtyard. 3 days passed very quickly. The Purple Thunder divine incantation had already stabilized at the 3rd layer. As long as Xiaoqian was willing, he could break through to the 4th layer at any time. On this night, Xiaoqian practiced the Lingyun saber technique in the courtyard, consolidating the twisting road around peak that he had learned. A cool breeze blew in the courtyard, and leaves flew everywhere. All sorts of illusions of mountains appeared and disappeared continuously. Xiaoqian sheathed his saber and stood upright. He carefully thought about the scene of that day. The path I walk is different from Zhang Lai's. I want to withdraw the mysterious phenomenon and focus on the energy within. However, the twisting road around peak that day only materialized the mysterious phenomenon but did not merge it perfectly. If I could merge it into my saber technique, its might should be able to improve. Even the small perfection mysterious phenomenon is not without flaws. Before a true bladesman, it could be easily broken. Thus, I have to think of a way to merge the twisting road around peak mysterious phenomenon into my saber. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.